Hey everyone, it's me again. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'd really love to know. I've gotten so many paranormal experiences from you all, and I seriously appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the latest videos. Oh, and have you been having trouble sleeping lately? Let me help you out. Now follow me. Get into bed, turn on your nightlight, and listen to today's paranormal stories. Alright, so I'll start with the basics, because I feel like you kind of need the full picture to understand why this whole thing feels so heavy. I'm a British lad, name's Jame, and I live with my mom. My dad doesn't stay here full time, but he comes up most weekends to help out, fix what he can, do the dad jobs, you know? We've also got a small zoo going on. 5 dogs now. Used to be more, but life happens. And 1 cat who acts like she owns the entire street. My mom, Elaine, is ill. Autoimmune disease. And not the, oh, she gets tired sometimes kind. I mean properly ill. The kind that takes over everything. My dad, Peter, has struggled with his mental health for years, and he lives with schizophrenia. But he's medicated and, most of the time, it genuinely does help. 5 years ago, we moved into this modern-looking house. From the outside, it looks decent. Clean lines, newer build, all that. But living in it? It's like the place is held together by bad intentions and wishful thinking. The electrics trip for no reason. The taps snap or leak. The shower dribbles through the ceiling like it's trying to rot the place from the inside. The boiler has this lovely habit of dying right when you need warmth the most. When we first moved in, my older sister Sophie lived with us too, but she moved out not long after, barely made it a year. And honestly, sometimes I think she escaped. Not long after that, my mom got sick in a way that didn't make sense. It started with food. Suddenly, she couldn't digest most things. She went from eating normally to living off a small list of safe foods, and over time that list got smaller and smaller. Like her body was rejecting the world bit by bit. Then came the extras. Ectopic heartbeats, those awful thudding skips that make you feel like your heart is doing something it shouldn't. Weird bowel issues that no one likes talking about, but it got serious enough that she needed help in ways that still make her feel humiliated, even though it's not her fault. And the doctors? For ages, they couldn't tell us anything solid. It was always stress. Anxiety. Maybe you're focusing on it too much. That sort of thing. Eventually, she paid for a private scan because she was getting desperate. And that's when they found something that made everyone go quiet. Her pancreas wasn't functioning properly, like it had basically packed up. And after even more time and more tests, the diagnosis finally came. Autoimmune disease. Just triggered. No clear reason, no obvious cause. It was like something flicked a switch and her body turned on itself. My dad, like I said, has 2 versions of himself. And I don't mean he's grumpy sometimes. I mean it feels like 2 completely different atmospheres. One is calmer, helpful, even gentle. The other is sharp and hostile, verbally aggressive, like he's stepping into a storm you can't talk him out of. And the weird part is, sometimes afterwards he barely remembers what he said. People will say, it's the schizophrenia, and maybe it is, but he's on medication that usually works for him, and his dose was adjusted not that long ago, so it still doesn't fully explain why it can flip like a light switch. Now, here's where it gets strange. And then there's the bad luck. Except it doesn't feel like random bad luck when it keeps happening. There are car accidents at the entrance to the estate constantly. Not once a year. I mean, it's become a thing people casually mention. Like, oh, another one at the entrance. But the bit that really made me start paying attention was the neighbors. 3 neighbors, all with weird health stuff. 2 had cancers that seemed to come out of nowhere. They got treated, thank God. But even after that, they've had lingering symptoms doctors still can't pin down. Fatigue, pains, odd flare-ups, things that never get named properly. The third has been ill for ages with no diagnosis at all. And then I remembered something that made my stomach drop. The person who lived in this house before us got sick with the same autoimmune disease as my mom. It's like the house has a favorite trick. And every year, without fail, around holidays, especially Christmas, everything gets worse. Like joy itself irritates the place. My dad slips into that nasty mood more often. My mum flares up. The house breaks more things. Something always happens. It's almost like it's trying to stop us from relaxing, stop us from enjoying anything, like it can't stand the idea of peace. We've had strange dreams too. My mom has this recurring nightmare that she's stuck in this haunted house. Not our house, not any place she recognizes, but it's always the same in the dream. She moves into it, and then she can't leave. Night after night, trapped in the same place. And I've had a couple dreams that felt pointed. Not scary in the usual way, more like being watched. One was a white void, just endless blankness, and in it was a black crow. The whole dream sort of pulled toward its eye, like the dream wanted me to look into it, and the eye was this pale, empty white. It didn't feel like a normal dream. It felt like something noticed me, and then it ended. Another dream, more recent, had us moved into my other sister's old house. But in the dream, it was wrecked, dilapidated, like time had chewed it up. I walked into the kitchen and there was this room with no door, just an opening into a gray nothingness. And standing there was this statue, like black armor, a figure shaped like a person but not alive. And again, the dream dragged my focus right into its face, where there were these pale markings. And then it snapped off like someone shut a laptop. Around the same time, my mum tried going back to work. Her employer sent her away to a countryside place for 2 weeks, sort of prove you can do it energy, which still makes me angry thinking about it. She came back stressed, yes, but physically she was okay. No flare-ups, nothing dramatic. And then within days of being back in this house, she flared again. She goes to A&E more than anyone should have to. And every time they reassure her, say her heart is stable, her tests look fine, she's not in immediate danger. But the second she comes home, the fear and depression sink back in, like the house is waiting at the door to grab her again. Now, I'm pagan. My parents are Christian, though they're mostly supportive. My mom used to be pagan years ago too. I do a bit of witchcraft, protective stuff, healing stuff, cleansing. They pray. And sometimes, this is the maddening part, both things help for a little while. Like you can feel the air lighten. And then there was this Friday. My mom was already dealing with ectopic heartbeats again, but earlier in the week they'd eased off. The night before Friday, I did a healing ritual. Quiet, focused, the kind where you don't even tell anyone because you don't want the skepticism in the room. And when she woke up the next morning, she'd actually had a break from the heart weirdness. Not perfect, but better. Friday afternoon, one of our dogs, Bran, he's normally fearless, started trying to get outside to go toilet. Nothing unusual. Then suddenly he froze, and he started yelping, proper panicked, high-pitched screaming like he'd seen something that terrified him. He bolted to the front door, scratching at it like he wanted to escape the house itself. And when anyone tried going outside, he freaked out even worse, like the outside was dangerous too. We rushed him to the vet, thinking maybe a seizure or pain or something. They found nothing. By the time we brought him home, he was basically normal again, tired, shaken, but physically fine. But the stress of it hit my mom like a brick. It re-triggered everything. The ectopic heartbeats came flooding back, constant, melting, one after another. And it felt so cruel because it was like something waited for the exact moment she'd started improving, and then shoved her back down. And ever since we started talking about what might be going on, since we started connecting dots, saying it out loud, things have ramped up again. Like it doesn't want us looking too closely. Like it's trying to drown us in noise so we stop thinking clearly. That's the part that gets under my skin most. The timing. The way it all feels reactive. I don't think it's a normal ghost story. It doesn't feel like a spirit in the hallway. It feels more like something vindictive and clever, something that nudges reality sideways. Sometimes I wonder if it's something like the Fae, something old and petty that doesn't care about human suffering. Other times I think it's more like a place thing, like the estate sits on something it shouldn't, like there's a thin spot here, a doorway or overlap or whatever you want to call it. And maybe it isn't even one thing. Maybe there are several weird forces in the area, and the one messing with my family isn't the same one twisting the weather. I don't even know what I want from telling you all this. Part of me wants someone to say, yeah, that sounds like this. Like there's a name for it and a way to deal with it. Part of me wants to feel less alone, because when you live in something like this for years, it starts to mess with your head. But mostly, I just want someone to hear it the way it feels from inside the house. Because when you live with enough coincidences, after a while they stop feeling like coincidences at all. So, I'm 26 and I live in the Netherlands, and something happened last night that I can't quite file away neatly in my head. I'm usually the type who tries to stay logical about things. I don't go around assuming everything is paranormal or mysterious. But I also don't love pretending I have every answer when I don't, so I'm keeping an open mind. Last night, around 10:30 p.m., I walked to a little late-night convenience shop not far from my place. It's a route I've taken 100 times. The quickest path cuts through this small neighborhood park, kind of tucked in between busy roads, except the park itself is dark, like no lighting at all. On the way back, I passed this athletics field with a track. Across from me, on the far side, there's a clubhouse building for the sports team. There's usually a small cafe area in there. I was near one end of the track, and the building was stretched along the long side opposite me, a good distance away. I came out of this patch of trees, like a wooded strip, and stepped into the open part near the track. And that's when I heard it. A whistle behind me. It wasn't super loud, but it was clear enough that my body reacted before my brain did. I turned around right away, and there was no one. No footsteps, no shadow, no movement, nothing. I told myself, okay, maybe someone's walking a dog back there, because that would at least make sense. But then, a few seconds later, I heard laughter coming from the same wooded area. It sounded like a woman's voice. And I want to be careful here, because the laugh itself wasn't like a movie, evil laugh or anything. It was pretty normal on the surface. But there was something in the tone that made my stomach tighten, like it didn't match the setting, like it carried in a way that felt wrong for how empty it looked. That's the part that really got me. So I started walking faster, aiming straight for the exit closest to the clubhouse building. And then, this is where it gets weird. Suddenly I heard birds. Not just a couple chirps, I mean full-on, layered, energetic morning birdsong, like dawn had just cracked open. But it was definitely late and dark, and the park had been quiet before that. The contrast was so sharp it made the hair on my arms rise. I've never heard anything like it at that hour, not in that place. At that point, my brain basically went, nope, and I started running. As I ran, I heard this loud bang, like something slammed or something heavy hit the ground. It sounded like it came from the direction of that clubhouse building, but I can't swear to it. In the moment, it just felt like the night was getting louder and closer all at once. I didn't even take the normal exit. I was so keyed up that I cut through the edge of the park instead, pushed through bushes and low branches just to get out onto the street faster, like I needed to be somewhere lit, somewhere with people, somewhere normal. And ever since then, I've had this lingering feeling that someone, or something, was nearby, like I was being watched. I know how that sounds. I also know I can't prove it objectively, but the feeling is still sitting in me. That's why I'm talking about it. I'm not trying to make it into some dramatic story. I genuinely want to understand what might have happened, whether it's something explainable that just hit my nervous system the wrong way, or whether there's another angle I'm not seeing. So, I live alone in a small apartment, just me, and for the past few months, something has been happening in my room that I can't fully explain. I don't even know how it started. I just know it shows up the second I have a sudden emotion, like a quick spike of stress, irritation, even excitement. It's like my body flips a switch and boom, it's there again. And when it happens, my whole body feels heavy, like someone stacked weights on my chest and limbs. My legs, especially my feet, start tingling like crazy, and my breathing gets shallow. It's not just, I'm freaked out. It's physical. I can feel it. Most of the time it starts with the bed, not shaking violently, nothing dramatic like in a movie, but enough that I can feel it through the mattress. And the second I notice it, I'm like, okay, here we go again. Then I'll catch movement out of the corner of my eye, like a small warped spot in the air, almost like a see-through smudge or an orbish blur. If I stare too hard, it's faint. If I stop trying to stare, I'll see it dart across the room like it doesn't even care if I notice. And here's the part that makes me angry. Not scared. Angry. Because whatever this is, it feels intrusive. Perverted. I'm not going to get graphic, but it tries to mess with my personal space in a way that makes me feel violated, especially when I'm lying down. Like I can't even relax in my own bed. I can't watch a show, scroll my phone, just exist peacefully, because it's like it's waiting for me to get comfortable so it can start up again. And I want you to understand something. I'm not sitting here trembling in fear. I'm just beyond fed up. It's been, around 3 months now? And I'm exhausted. I've tried everything I can think of. I've saged the room more than once. I've lit incense. I even tried meditating, thinking maybe if I calmed my body down it would stop. Except weirdly, when I tried that, it felt like it got more active. Like it noticed. Like it leaned in closer. And it's not only the sensations. It messes with my head. My face gets hot, like flushed heat, and my body buzzes like light static. And then the worst part. My thoughts start drifting in directions I don't want. Like it tries to shove itself into my mind. It's not like I'm choosing it. It's like, the more I notice it, the more it stays, and the more my brain gets hijacked. What's maddening is this. If I'm distracted, really focused, like cooking or deep into a task, sometimes I don't register it and it backs off. Not because it's gone, but because my attention isn't feeding it. That's what it feels like. Like awareness is the hook. I've prayed too. A lot. I'm not even trying to make this into some dramatic religious thing, but I've straight up said out loud, in Jesus' name, leave. I've rebuked it. I've begged. I've pleaded. I've tried being calm. I've tried being forceful. And it just keeps coming back. Some nights I get so frustrated I feel like I could scream. like I want to rip the whole bed apart and start over somewhere else. I've had moments where I'm just pacing, furious, thinking, this is my home, this is my body, you don't get to do this. And when it finally backs off, the change is immediate. The whole room feels lighter, like someone opened a window inside the air. My chest doesn't feel crushed anymore. My face cools down. My thoughts clear up. And I'll just sit there thinking, oh my God, that's what normal feels like. But when it returns, it's like getting shoved back underwater. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Tired, angry, over it. And I'm saying this honestly. I don't know if this is something paranormal, psychological, stress-related, or something else entirely. But I do know it's real in the sense that I'm experiencing it, and it's pushing me to my limit. If you're listening and you've ever dealt with something like this, whether you call it anxiety, sleep issues, trauma responses, spiritual stuff, whatever, please, I just need something, a direction, a foothold, because I'm trying to keep myself grounded, and I don't want this to keep stealing my peace. So, let me tell you about the house I live in. It's me, my mom, my little sister, 2 cats, and 2 small dogs. Basically a full house, in every sense. A few years back, maybe 3-ish, we moved. We picked this newer place, one of those homes that's attached on both sides. Like, our house is right in the middle, with a neighbor on the left and a neighbor on the right. It felt perfect at the time. Clean, modern, not full of history, you know? When we first moved in, nothing felt off. It was just a normal house. Back then, we didn't even have the 2 cats we have now. There was another cat, Milo, who we had for years and who passed away last summer. But at the start, no weird vibes, no creepy nights, nothing like that. And then, about 2 years ago, things started. It began with sounds upstairs. And I don't mean the usual house settling noises. I mean the kind of creaking you get when a person is walking across the floor. Step, step, step. Plus this soft, heavy little thoom that happens with each footfall. If you've ever been downstairs while someone walks around above you, you know that exact sound. Except, the problem was that everyone would be downstairs with me. At first I tried to explain it away. I was like, okay, maybe it's the dogs? But they're tiny. They don't make that kind of weighty noise. And the cats have their own sound too. When they're tearing around, it's more like quick thuds and skitters. Plus the upstairs is carpet, so you can actually hear the dogs' paws when they run. This wasn't that. This was slow, deliberate, human. Eventually I mentioned it to my sister. Her name's Callie, and she just looked at me like, wait, you hear that too? Because she'd been noticing it as well. It's not constant, which almost makes it worse. It happens randomly, mostly during the day. Just footsteps, up there, like someone's pacing or checking rooms. And then it wasn't only the footsteps. Little things started piling up. Stuff would fall for no reason. Lights would flicker, even after bulbs were changed. Doors would drift open or swing shut when no one touched them. And sometimes, this part really gets me, my pets would act like something invisible was right in front of them. Like the dogs would do that play bow and start doing those little excited hops, wagging at empty air. One of the cats would stare at a corner and do that twitchy head thing like it's tracking movement. You know when animals play with something you can't see and you try to laugh it off, but your stomach still drops a bit? Yeah, that. But the bathroom stuff is what really convinced me something was genuinely weird. Every morning, I shower and I always lock the bathroom door from the inside. Always. I'm the kind of person who checks it. Twice, 3 times. Because I hate the idea of someone barging in, even though nobody ever does. And yet, a few times, I've stepped out of the shower, dripping, reaching for my towel, and the door is unlocked. Unlocked. Like I never locked it. Except I did. I know I did. And then the opposite has happened too. Sometimes I'll pop into the bathroom just to clean my piercings or grab something quick, and I won't bother locking it because I'm literally in there for a minute. One time, I specifically remember leaving it unlocked. I even remember the little click of the door shutting without me turning the lock. When I went to leave, it was locked. I stood there for a second, kind of frozen, trying to convince myself I must have done it without thinking. So I unlock it, and the door won't open. Like it's stuck. Like something is holding it shut. And then, after I'm basically panicking, it just opens, like nothing happened. Now here's another thing. I keep my bathroom door shut all the time because I don't want the cats jumping up on the counters and knocking things over. And in this house, each floor has its own bathroom. The one on the first floor is basically mine because my bedroom is down there. My mom and sister have theirs upstairs, so nobody really uses mine but me. Multiple times I've shut that bathroom door, gone into my bedroom for a while, and when I come back later, the bathroom door is wide open. At first I blamed the cats too. That's the obvious answer, right? Cats are little chaos machines. But then it happened when both cats were literally with me. Like, on my bed, in my room. No chance they'd done it. And the dogs can't reach the handle even if they stand up. They're too small. And it's not my family. I'm up late a lot, and it's happened when my mom and Callie are definitely asleep upstairs. Like, dead quiet, everyone in bed, and still, somehow, the door opens. Then there are the smaller things. The annoying, reality-twisting stuff. I'm really organized. Like, it bothers me if something isn't where it should be. I have a specific drawer where I keep my school things. Revision books, notebooks, pencil case, everything. It's my little everything goes here drawer. And things go missing from it. Not in the I lost it in my bag way. In the I put it in the drawer and it is not there anymore way. My sister doesn't go into my room, like ever. And my mom wouldn't be rummaging through my revision stuff. And I'm telling you, I don't misplace things like that. I can't even relax if I know something isn't put away properly. So when something disappears, it drives me insane because I know where it should be. And that's kind of the scariest part, honestly. Not one big dramatic moment, but all these little things stacking up until you start living with this constant feeling of something else is here. Not always, not in your face, but enough that you can't unnotice it. So the other day I was scrolling and saw someone talking about a mimic, and it hit me like a little mental whiplash, because I have a story that still gives me that cold, betrayed feeling in my chest when I remember it. Okay, quick setup because it matters. Back in 2019, my partner and I'll call him Eli, rented this small place in Washington. It was in a noisy area, like freeway close. You know that constant hum where even quiet never feels truly quiet? And the house sat across from a stretch of land that always felt a little too open and watchful at night. We worked opposite shifts, so there were days where we barely overlapped at all. This was one of those days. I got up, went to work, came home, and crashed without ever seeing him. We had 2 dogs back then, big, sleep in the bed, no negotiation types. They always stayed glued to me until Eli came home, and then they'd do their whole routine, jumping down, dancing around him, acting like he'd returned from a war instead of a shift. So that night, I'm dead asleep, and I wake up to the dogs launching off the bed. I roll over and look through my bedroom doorway into the living room, and there he is. Eli's standing just inside the front door, and the dogs are spinning and prancing around him like idiots, happy, squealing, tails going a mile a minute. And he's laughing, doing that soft baby voice thing people do with dogs, like, "Oh, hey there." Then he looks up at me, smiles. He's wearing this bright, swirly tie-dye band shirt, one of his favorites, and a gray trucker hat. Totally normal, completely ordinary. And honestly, I remember feeling this warm little wave of relief, like, okay, he's home, everything's fine, and that deep, sleepy comfort slid right back over me. I barely even spoke. I think I just nodded, half asleep, and rolled back over. A minute later, I hear movement, like he's walking around, maybe in the kitchen. Cupboard noises, the normal sounds of someone coming home and existing. Then I feel the dogs hop back onto the bed and settle in again, their whole mission accomplished vibe. And I'm drifting, like maybe 20 minutes pass, give or take. Then I hear the front door open, again. The dogs explode off the bed again, same exact way, same frantic excitement. And I sit up because my brain can't quite make it make sense. And Eli walks in, says, "Oh, hey there." Same shirt, same hat, same cadence. I just stared at him, and my stomach did this awful drop, like the floor inside me fell out. I blurted, "Where did you go?" He pauses and gives me this confused look. "What do you mean?" And I'm suddenly wide awake, heart pounding, sitting upright like someone slapped me. "No, where did you just go? You were already here." And he kind of laughs, but it's the nervous laugh you do when you're not sure if someone's joking. "Babe, I didn't go anywhere. I just got off work." That's when the fear really hit. Not like a jump scare fear, more like a creeping, crawling wrongness. Like my skin didn't sit right on my body anymore. Because I was so sure I'd just seen him come in, and the more I replayed it in my head, the more the first version of him started to feel off. Like, this is hard to explain without sounding ridiculous, but it's the truth. The first time, his eyes looked darker. Eli has these very clear, bright blue eyes, and I remember thinking afterward, I don't think they were blue. I kept staring at him and asking, "Are you really you?" Over and over, until he finally got kind of serious and said, "Yes, of course I'm me." And I know how this sounds, I really do, but I needed something I could anchor to. So I asked him to tell me something only we would know, something private, something no one else could guess. And he answered correctly, immediately, no hesitation. I didn't even relax though, I just felt shaken in a different way. Like, okay, so maybe he's him now, but what the hell was I looking at earlier? That night we made up a safety phrase, like a ridiculous little password, but we treated it seriously. Something we could use if either of us ever had that gut feeling again, like, prove you're you. And I remember saying out loud, quiet but firm, like I wanted the walls to hear it. Something like, "Don't do that again. Mimicking isn't welcome here." I know how it sounds, but I also remember the feeling, and it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like being fooled right to your face. And honestly, that was only one incident in that house. That place was active. After a while, the paranormal stuff almost became routine, which is a weird thing to admit. But it wasn't just me and Eli. Friends who stayed over had experiences too. People would come in skeptical and leave kind of quiet. Later on, we learned some heavy history about the house. Supposedly, a baby had passed there years earlier, and there'd also been another tenant who died there too, an overdose. I can't prove the stories, obviously, but hearing them didn't exactly make the place feel lighter. While we lived there were nights where it felt like something toyed with us. I had my hair gently tugged like someone was standing behind me. Objects would move, or get knocked, or, once, something got tossed in our direction like it wanted us to know it could. And I'm not talking, maybe it slid. I mean the kind of motion that makes your brain go blank for a second because it doesn't fit the rules. I even saw an apparition once, clear enough that I still remember exactly where it stood, like a stain in the air. But that night, him coming home twice, that's the one that sticks with me in a very particular way. Because it wasn't just scary, it felt personal. It felt like something borrowed the shape of someone I love and tried it on, just to see if it could. We moved away years ago, and I'm grateful for that. But every now and then, I'll see someone else mention a mimic, and it's like my body remembers before my mind even catches up. And if you've ever had something similar happen, if you've ever had that moment where someone looks right but doesn't feel right, I just want you to know, you're not alone in it. I don't know what it was. I can't give it a neat label. I just know what I saw, and I know how wrong it felt. So, this happened when I was about 15. I'm a grown adult now, and I still get that prickly goosebump feeling when I think about it. It was sometime around 2011 or 2012, I'm pretty sure. I'd been at my friend Maya's house all afternoon. One of those days where you lose track of time because you're laughing, snacking, just being a kid. Then my dad, Mark, texted that he was outside to pick me up. By the time I got in the car, the sun had already dropped and it was properly dark. My mom was waiting at home so we could eat dinner together, and my dad decided to take this back route we used sometimes. We lived near a military base then, and there was this lesser-used entrance that cut the driveway down. The trade-off was, it was creepy. Just a long, winding road with woods on both sides. No streetlights, no houses, no nothing. Just trees and shadows. I was in the passenger seat, and at first everything was normal. We chatted the way we always did. School stuff, my little brother being annoying, guessing what my mom cooked, the usual. The heater was on, the dashboard lights were glowing, and the road ahead was like this narrow tunnel carved through the forest. And then, without either of us really deciding to, the conversation just thinned out. Not like we had an argument, not like anything happened. It just faded, like someone slowly turned the volume knob down. A minute later, I felt cold, like suddenly cold, which didn't make sense because the car was warm. And then I got this sensation on the back of my head, right at the base of my skull, like the feeling you get when someone is staring at you from behind. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I kept my eyes forward, glued to the road. But I could see my dad in my peripheral vision, and he had changed too. His posture got a little tighter. His face looked focused, but not in a normal, driving carefully way. More like he was trying to keep himself calm. The car was an SUV at the time, with 2 rows behind us. Plenty of space back there. And this is the part that still makes me uncomfortable to describe. I got this strong, almost instinctive command in my head. Do not look behind you. Like it wasn't even a thought I formed. It was a rule that suddenly existed. And along with that came this other feeling, just as clear. Something is in the back. Not a person you could explain. Not a shape you could picture. Just a presence. Like the air back there had weight. And I remember thinking, very quietly, very carefully, if I don't acknowledge it, nothing will happen. Like saying it out loud would make it real in the worst way. So I stayed silent. I didn't turn my head. I didn't check the side mirror. I didn't even shift in my seat. I just watched the road and listened to the hum of the tires like it was the only safe sound in the world. It felt like forever, but it was probably just a couple minutes. Then we started approaching the base gate, and everything changed. There were floodlights up ahead, bright, harsh lights, and suddenly the world wasn't just darkness and trees anymore. We pulled up, checked in, drove through, and kept going toward home. Somewhere between that gate and our driveway, the feeling eased off. Like whatever it was couldn't, or wouldn't, follow us into the light and the normalness of things. We pulled into the driveway and my dad parked. Engine off. Silence. And here's what's weird. Neither of us got out. We just sat there, still. Like we were both waiting for the other person to prove it was over. I remember my hands felt a little numb, like I'd been clenching without realizing it. Finally, I turned and looked at my dad, ready to make some dumb joke and break the tension. And his expression, I can't even fully describe it. It was like he was trying to act casual, but his eyes were saying, "Please tell me you felt that too." I went, "What?" He hesitated, then nodded slightly toward the back seats and said, really quietly, "Okay, when we were driving just now, did you feel something? Like someone was in the back?" My stomach dropped. Instant chills. The kind that start in your shoulders and rush all the way down your arms. And I just whispered, "Yes." I told him I'd felt it the whole time, and I didn't want to say anything because it felt like speaking would make it worse. And he let out this tense little laugh, like relief mixed with nerves, and admitted he hadn't wanted to say anything either. He said he didn't even want to look in the rearview mirror. He just kept his eyes on the road and waited for it to pass. We sat there another moment, both of us kind of absorbing the fact that we had shared the same exact experience without a single word. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if there's some psychological explanation, or if the road itself just messes with you, or if it was something else entirely. All I know is, whatever that feeling was, it felt real. And the part that stays with me the most isn't even the fear. It's the fact that my dad felt it too. At the same time, in the same silence. And we both, instinctively, chose the same thing. Don't look back. Okay, so a bunch of people have been asking me to tell more stories about my family, and honestly, I get it. Because the truth is, my family's always been tuned in. Like, we've got gifts. We pick up on things. And sometimes, that means things pick up on us. So let me tell you about the time we lived in this condo that was absolutely, unmistakably, haunted. And I don't mean, oh, the vibes were weird. I mean stuff happened. Constantly. First of all, my body knew before my brain did. I was sick all the time in that place. Like, constantly run down, always coughing, always exhausted. But the second I left the condo, I'd feel normal again. It was like my health came back the moment I crossed the parking lot. And there was this one presence in particular. And I'm telling you right now, it had an attitude. Like it wanted smoke with me specifically. And I used to laugh about it because I was the only black person in my family living there at the time. So I'd be like, "Oh, great. We got a hateful little ghost too. Cute." Like an equal opportunity menace. But jokes aside, it wasn't funny for long. Because my niece, let's call her Maya. Maya was a little kid then, but she was already a medium. The kind where you don't have to teach her anything. She just knows. And whatever was in that condo, it felt like it wanted her attention. Like it wanted to feed off her. So I stayed on guard. All the time. Because I could handle it messing with me. But I wasn't letting it mess with her. And it did mess with me. Especially when I was weak. One time I had this nasty cold. One of those ones where you're half delirious, throat on fire, body aching, just miserable. I was in bed, and I swear to you, I felt something sit down on the mattress, like the bed dipped. Then it was like the weight shifted, hard, and I slid in a way that could have snapped my neck if I'd fallen wrong. I panicked and tried to bolt out of the room, because I'm scared of the dark, and I always sleep with my door cracked, always. But when I reached the door, it was locked. Locked. And that's not normal for me. I never lock my door, especially not at night. So I'm standing there sick as a dog, heart pounding, trying to yank it open, and it felt like the room was closing in around me. Another time, I was downstairs with some of my relatives, my aunt, my cousin, just hanging out, while Maya was asleep in my room. Suddenly we hear this violent bang upstairs, like something got dropped hard. I ran up, fast, and when I opened my bedroom door, my stomach just sank. My entire bookshelf had been knocked over, flat on its side, right next to the bed. And Maya was a tiny kid. That shelf could have seriously hurt her, could have killed her. But by some miracle, she was tucked way over on the far side, pressed close to the wall like she'd instinctively moved away. After that, my sister, Maya's mom, told me something Maya had said. Maya claimed there was a whole family in the condo. She described a teenage boy wearing overalls, and she said it like she was dead serious, like it wasn't a guess. She said there were parents too, and a little blonde girl. And then she casually drops this part like it's no big deal. They live in the closet. The closet. And she was mad because the little blonde girl kept playing with her toys. I remember being like, okay, babe, sure, maybe she's got a big imagination. She's 6. Kids say stuff. But I still believed her, because Maya doesn't lie. She's never been that kind of kid. So fast forward years later, like almost a decade, and we start doing this thing where we zoom in on photos from that condo. Because weirdly, we'd noticed before that faces sometimes showed up. Like the tenants were always present, like they paid rent. So we're zooming in, laughing a little, creeping ourselves out. And then we get to this one photo. It's a picture of me with my older nieces. In the photo, my oldest niece is in front, and I'm behind her with my younger niece beside me. And behind my oldest niece's shoulder, there's a boy, a teen, wearing overalls, just staring directly at me and my younger niece like he's watching us on purpose. I swear to you, my blood went cold so fast I felt it in my teeth. Because Maya described that exact boy, years before I ever noticed him. And at the time, I'd told myself it was probably just a kid thing, just imagination. Nope, there he was, overalls and all. And the worst part? When you zoom in, it's not even just him. There are other faces, half-formed, like they're peeking out from shadows. And one of them, this is the part that really messed me up, looked like my dog that had passed away. Like she was there, watching over us from wherever she went. That picture messed me up for a long time. Because once you see something like that with your own eyes, you can't pretend anymore. You can't rationalize it away. You either accept the world is bigger than you thought, or you lie to yourself. And from that day on, I never doubted Maya again. Not even for a second. Because she kept being right, over and over. And now she's grown into an absolutely gifted medium. And that condo? Oh, it had more in it than that family. Here's another one that still makes me shudder. Back then, I was finishing high school and also going to cosmetology classes. I used to grow my nails out because I did nail art for my portfolio. Little designs, practice sets, the whole thing. And I didn't have many people to model for me, so I practiced on myself a lot. One morning, I woke up in this sharp, burning pain. I looked down at my hand and my long thumbnail, my good thumbnail, had been snapped clean off. Like ripped. Not a little break, I mean gone. And on the same hand, I had 3 deep scratches, long, dramatic marks, like somebody dragged claws down me. And I'm sitting there like, how did I not wake up? How did I not feel it happen? We didn't have pets. No cat, no dog, nothing. I checked the bed, the blankets, everything. No broken plastic, no sharp edges, no explanation. Just those marks. And that's the thing about places like that. After a while, you're not even asking, is this real anymore? You're just trying to get through the day without being targeted. I know I'm telling this kind of fast, but honestly, it feels good to say it out loud. Because it takes a lot to scare me. And even then, I still hate when people act like you're crazy for describing something you lived through. My mom has passed since then, and she still visits sometimes. Not in a scary way, more like comfort. Like she checks in. So sometimes the gift part of all this outweighs the ugly side. But yeah, my family and I have always felt like we're haunted. Like something about us, about what we can sense, makes spirits restless. Like they notice us more. And the funniest part? We moved recently. New place, fresh start. And then Jordan comes up to me one day, completely serious, and says, "So, I found these condos we could look at." And I'm like, "Which condos?" And they named them. The same ones. But I'm older now. I'm not just scared. I can identify what's happening. I can feel manipulation when it tries to sneak in wearing a normal face. So no, we are not going back. Anyway, keep it spooky, because I've got plenty more. And trust me, this one was one of the lighter stories. Okay, so you know how some jobs just blur together after a while? That's basically my life. I supervise new builds, which means I'm usually the first person unlocking the place in the morning and the last one locking it up. And I'm used to catching the usual nonsense. Missed outlets, half-installed fixtures, tools abandoned in weird spots, breakers left in the wrong position. All of it. After enough houses, you stop being surprised. But this one actually got to me. So I'm walking a house that the electricians, supposedly, wrapped up late yesterday afternoon. Nothing fancy, just my normal routine. Check the fixtures, test outlets, scan for trash, jot down punch list stuff. I'm moving room to room, kind of on autopilot, and I end up in one of the back bedrooms. Smaller one, with a view of the lot line and a muddy little backyard because it rained the night before. Anyway, I go to check the closet, and the closet light is on. Not like, oh, they forgot to shut it off, because that happens. It was more the vibe of it. Bright, steady, almost too clean looking for a dusty, unfinished closet. But whatever. I reach for the switch outside the closet and flip it. Nothing. I flip it down, up, down again. Still nothing. No click feel change, no flicker, no dimming. Just the light stays on like the switch doesn't even exist. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe someone wired it hot by mistake. It happens. Rare, but it happens. And I'm already annoyed because that's not a later fix. That's a get back here fix. I step into the closet and go to unscrew the bulb, just to kill it and prove the point. And when my fingers touch the bulb, this is the part I can't shake. It's cold. Like room temperature. Not even a little warm. No heat at all. But it's still lit. Bright as anything. I just freeze for a second, because my brain's trying to file it away under electrical weirdness, but nothing about that makes sense. Even an LED gives off some heat when it's been on, and this thing looked like it had been on for a while. So I back out and call the lead electrician. His name's Marcus. Good guy, dependable, not the type to mess around. I tell him, hey, there's a closet light in the back bedroom that's stuck on. Switch doesn't work. I think it's wired wrong. There's a pause, And Marcus goes, "That bedroom doesn't have a closet light. We didn't rough one in. There's no line in that closet." And I'm literally standing there staring at a working light. So I'm like, "Marcus, I'm looking at it right now." He swears up and down, "No, there's no fixture on that plan, no wire run, nothing." He even tells me which circuits they tied in that side of the house. Says if I'm seeing a light, it didn't come from them. I'm standing there with my phone in my hand, and I decide, fine, picture. At least then I'm not arguing about something that sounds like I'm losing it. I step back into the closet, lift my phone, and the light is off. Just off. Completely dead. Like it never existed as anything other than a cheap little fixture screwed to the ceiling. I hit the switch again. Nothing. I try it slow, I try it fast, like that matters. Still nothing. I put my hand on the bulb again. Still cold. No hum, no faint flicker, no sign it ever had power. And I just stood there. Not for a second. Like a full minute, maybe longer, just staring at it, trying to force some explanation to appear. A loose neutral? Backfeed? Somebody on site messing with me? But I was alone. The house was quiet. No radios, no footsteps, nothing. But I can't explain what happened in that closet. And the part that makes it worse is, later, I went back. After lunch, I walked straight to that same bedroom like I was daring reality to do it again. Same closet, same fixture, still off. Switch still dead. I even checked the panel, breaker positions looked normal. No power to that switch. No reason that light should have ever turned on in the first place. I didn't tell the builder. I can already hear how it would sound. "Hey, so, funny thing, your house has a light that turns itself on even though it's not wired." Yeah, no thanks. I don't need to be known as the supervisor who thinks a closet is haunted. But I'll tell you this, something about that moment stuck with me. The way it felt, how suddenly it changed, how certain I was of what I saw. I've replayed it over and over, trying to poke holes in it, trying to make it make sense. And I still can't. It was just wrong. Like the house blinked. Like it showed me something for a second and then decided it didn't want to be caught. So, I've been lurking in these kinds of story spaces forever, and I finally decided to share the one that's been stuck in my family's head for decades. This happened to my parents about 30 years ago, back in the mid-90s, when my dad took a short contract job in Bangalore. They were newly married, no kids yet, and the company set them up in this neat duplex apartment. Comfortable, quiet, and honestly kind of dreamy for that stage of life. It was also one of those homes where help was built into the rhythm of the day. A couple of lively house staff came in, cleaning, groceries, most of the cooking, so my mom's days were pretty calm. She wasn't working at the time, so she'd spend her mornings puttering around the house, reading, calling family, that kind of thing. Now here's the first small thing that, in hindsight, feels like a warning sign. There was an older lady living on the same floor, Ms. Shanta, I think my mom said her name was. Polite enough, but she had this habit of staring just a beat too long. Not rude, just like she was trying to decide something. One day, after a few hellos in the hallway, she goes, "You're staying in that flat?" My mom, confused, just nods, and the woman tilts her head and says, "You don't feel anything?" My mom asked what she meant, but the woman didn't really answer. She just kept repeating, in different ways, that my mom shouldn't be alone there for long. My mom brushed it off, like, okay, maybe she's lonely. Maybe she's superstitious. Maybe she's just older and anxious. My parents were both skeptics. the type who'd rather laugh at a ghost story than believe one. Then came the morning. It was bright out, cool, clean Bangalore weather. Around 8-ish, one of the house staff had just finished mopping, and the floors still had that slightly damp, squeaky look. My mom was in the kitchen with my dad's visiting aunt, Auntie Mira, who was staying with them for a week. My dad was in the living room, sitting in one of those cushy armchairs with the newspaper open. Their living room layout was really simple: 2 armchairs with a little table between them for the landline, and to the left, big sliding balcony doors that let in a ton of light. The phone rang. My mom picked it up and immediately went quiet. It was a relative calling with bad news. My mom's grandmother, who'd been very old and had been fading for a while, had passed away. Natural causes. Peaceful, they said. But still, my mom adored her. Like, truly close. So she's standing there holding the receiver, trying to keep it together, and then she hands the phone to my dad so he can speak to the family too. And as my dad reaches out to take the receiver, a single, heavy drop of dark red liquid falls to the floor. Then another, smaller, then another, and another. Just plop, 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 in this weird little trail that moved toward the balcony doors. And the part that made them both feel cold was that it didn't land on him. It didn't hit his feet. It didn't splash his pants. It was like whatever was dropping was deliberately avoiding him, skipping neatly beside him. My mom said it looked exactly like fresh blood. Not paint, not rust water. Blood. The kind you'd see if someone had a deep cut. They froze. Because the floor had just been mopped. No one had walked through anything. No one was bleeding. My dad checked his hands, his arms. My mom checked hers. Auntie Mira checked herself. They looked at the ceiling. No leak, no crack, nothing wet above them. And the staff member who was still there? She took one glance, went pale, and flat out refused to come near it. So it just stayed there. And after that, my mom took the neighbor's advice more seriously. She started spending afternoons out of the house, at a nearby library, sometimes a cafe. My dad would meet her after work, and they'd come home together. Time moved on. The story faded into that strange category of, we don't talk about it, but we also never forgot it. Until their last night there. They were leaving Bangalore the next morning. Early flight, suitcases open, everything half-packed. They were in the bedroom folding clothes and sorting documents, tired but excited, to finally go home. My mom dropped something, maybe a toiletry bottle or a stack of papers. She bent down to pick it up, and that's when it happened again. Same pattern, one big drop, then smaller drops, tracking forward in a line. And again, no contact, like it was falling around her, not onto her, like something was aiming with unsettling precision. That was the moment my parents stopped trying to be rational. They looked at each other and had that silent, wide-eyed, nope conversation without speaking. They actually considered leaving their luggage and going to a hotel for the remaining few hours. In the end, they just stayed awake, lights on, counting down until morning. They left Bangalore with no explanation. But it didn't end when they left. A younger couple, friends of theirs, were scheduled to move into that same duplex right after. My parents warned them, of course, and the couple basically laughed it off. Bigger skeptics even. The kind who'd be like, sure, haunted blood apartment, and roll their eyes. A couple of weeks into living there, the wife woke up late at night thirsty and went downstairs to the kitchen for water. On her way back up the stairs, half asleep and barefoot, she noticed something odd beside her foot. A drop, then another on the next step, and another. As she climbed, the drops continued, one per step, like it was pacing her, matching her movement. Not a puddle at the bottom, not a smear, just these perfectly timed drops appearing alongside her feet as she moved upward. She panicked, full body terror, and she ended up having a seizure right there on the stairs and falling. The crash woke her husband, who ran out and managed to get her back to bed, She recovered, thankfully, but the whole thing shook them deeply. In the morning, the husband decided it had to be a prank. He scraped up what had dried, this brownish, brittle stuff, using a stiff piece of card and sealed it into a tiny vial. His plan was to get it tested at a lab on the way to work, just to prove it was something mundane. He left the building, waved down an auto rickshaw, climbed in, and the moment he did, the driver somehow lost control. The auto spun fully around, like a complete 360, then jolted so hard he got flung out with his work bag. The driver wasn't hurt, but the husband landed badly and broke his arm. And here's the part he swore up and down was impossible. When someone picked up his bag later and they went looking for that little vial, it was gone. Not spilled, not shattered, gone. Even though it had been zipped inside a deep pocket in his office bag. After that, there were smaller incidents, little things my parents heard about secondhand, but those were the big ones. The ones that made even the skeptics stop laughing. And the strangest part is that the building is still there. My family's been back to Bangalore several times over the years, and they've passed that apartment again, just sitting there like any other home, sun on the balcony doors, normal life inside, as if none of it ever happened. But my parents still look up at it, a little longer than they mean to. Some part of you stays unsettled. So before I tell you any of this, you have to understand, I've never been a ghost person. Like, I love a creepy story. I'm totally open to the idea that the world is full of things we can't explain. But my default setting is skeptical. Logical. I'm the kind of person who needs a reason that makes sense before I let myself call something paranormal. My partner, let's call him Ethan, is a little more open to it than I am, but not in an intense way. He's heard enough odd things in his life to keep a small part of his mind cracked open. His mom has a couple stories that still give her chills. And Ethan had one experience years ago that he still can't explain. But it's not like he walks around talking about spirits all the time. We're both spiritual in that energy is real kind of way. We believe people leave imprints. We believe grief changes a space. But I still struggle to look at anything strange and go, yep, ghost. And honestly, I never had a personal reason to even consider it. Until my dad died. It was late 2022, and it wasn't peaceful. It was sudden and painful and complicated. He'd been struggling hard for a long time. Depression, alcoholism, the kind of sickness that doesn't just live in the body but kind of sinks into a person's whole presence. Losing him cracked something open in me, but even then, I tried to stay grounded. Grief does weird things. Brains do weird things. Houses creak. That's what I kept telling myself. Then, about 5 months after he passed, something happened that still makes my stomach tighten when I think about it. I woke up dead asleep, right in the middle of the night, with that unmistakable feeling of someone being there. Not like a noise, not like a dream, like a weight in the air. Like I was being watched, not in a creepy, predatory way, but in a way that made my skin go cold anyway. And I swear, in the darkness, I could make out this not fully formed shape. A shadowy figure standing close, too close, right beside the bed, like it was leaning over me. I couldn't see a face, nothing clear, just presence. It didn't feel evil, it didn't feel angry, but it felt heavy, lonely, sad. The way my dad's energy used to feel near the end, like someone carrying too much. I remember being scared, just instantly, and the moment I felt that fear spike, it was like it backed away. Like whatever it was recognized, oh, you're not ready. The next day I told Ethan, and he didn't laugh. didn't brush it off. He just listened and said quietly, "I believe you." And we moved on, because what else do you do with something like that? Around that same time, Ethan opened up about the thing that happened to him years earlier, long before we were together. He told me about his ex, Maya, who died from an overdose. She'd been trying, apparently. She'd gotten clean, slipped, and then it happened while she was alone, in some random place, with people who weren't really her people. She was only in her early 20s, and Ethan was dating her when she passed. He said a while after her death, he was in bed one night, half asleep, and he heard the front door open. You know how you can recognize someone's routine without even thinking about it? The little sounds. Keys, shoes, a bag set down. He heard all of it and assumed it was his girlfriend at the time getting home from work, and then he fully woke up. His girlfriend wasn't home. She was still at work. He told me it wasn't scary. It didn't feel malicious. It felt familiar, like someone passing through, not trying to haunt him, just trying to be close for a second. So between my experience and his, we had this unspoken understanding. Maybe there's more out there than we know, but we didn't obsess over it. Life kept moving. The house stayed normal, until recently. The last couple weeks have been different. It started small, one of those nights where you wake up briefly and the air feels off. Not a sound, not a sight, just a weird shift in the room, like the atmosphere got thicker. I didn't even say anything. I rolled over and forced myself back to sleep. I didn't want to give it power. I didn't want to spiral. But then, a few days later, Ethan admitted he'd felt something similar too. And then came the first thing we both heard. We were downstairs having dinner one evening, just the two of us in the kitchen, and we heard a door close upstairs. Not a gentle click, not the kind of soft drift you can blame on air pressure. It was loud. A clean, unmistakable, someone just closed a door sound. We both froze, because no one was up there. Not the kids, not the bat, nothing. We just stared at each other like, "Did you hear that?" And the look on his face told me he did. Then a day or two after that, we were in our bedroom talking. I was standing near my vanity, and Ethan was sitting on the bed. And out of nowhere, this little travel-sized perfume bottle tipped over and started rolling, like it had been nudged. And I mean rolled, not a tiny wobble. It fell and moved like it had momentum. The thing is, nothing was near it. The cat wasn't in the room. There wasn't an AC vent blasting toward it. The surface wasn't uneven. I checked. I stood there staring at it like I was trying to force physics to confess. Ethan laughed in that nervous way people laugh when they don't know what else to do, and he goes, "Well, okay then. Guess we've got a roommate." We joked, but it wasn't really funny, because I'm telling you, there are weird moments you can talk yourself out of. And then there are moments where your brain runs through the entire list of explanations and comes up empty. Then, last night, we're watching a movie. And of course, it had to be a scary one. We're already on edge, already doing that pretend we're not scared thing. And suddenly the TV glitches, just for a second, and then it exits out of Netflix and opens a completely different streaming app. Not buffering, not a pause, not like someone hit back once. A whole other platform opens up like someone intentionally navigated there. Neither of us had the remote in our hands. It wasn't even within reach, and no one else was in the room. We just sat there in silence for a beat, and then Ethan goes, very quietly, "Okay, that's new." And here's the part I keep remembering in hindsight. About 2 weeks before all of this, we had this episode with the lights. Not a normal flicker like, "Oh, power surge." It was this eerie, repeated dim and brighten, like someone was playing with a switch, just enough to make you look up and go, "Wait, what was that?" The kids noticed too. Everyone got that uncomfortable little laugh going, like, "Okay, weird." And then we moved on. But now it feels like that was the first tap on the shoulder. It feels random. And the strangest part is, whatever this is, it doesn't feel evil. It doesn't feel like something trying to hurt us. But it also doesn't feel like my dad. And it doesn't feel like Maya. It feels unfamiliar, like something or someone trying to be noticed, but not necessarily trying to be understood. I did get a tarot reading recently where the reader said an ancestor was trying to connect, but even that doesn't quite fit the vibe. It's hard to explain. It's like the energy doesn't feel personal. It feels present. So I'm not sitting here saying, I'm convinced there's a ghost in my house. That still feels dramatic coming out of my mouth. But I am saying that I've run out of tidy explanations. And when you get to that point, when things keep happening in a way that feels intentional, you start to wonder if maybe the house isn't just a house. Maybe it's listening. Maybe it's responding. Or maybe something else is. So earlier today, I'm sitting at my desk in my bedroom, half working and half doing that thing where you pretend you're being productive, scrolling an online store I shouldn't be on, watching a how to get your life together video like it's going to magically fix me. And then it hits. That sudden, heavy exhaustion. This has happened to me before, every now and then. It's like my body decides it's done for the day before my brain gets the memo. I'm not frozen or anything, I can move, but everything becomes absurdly heavy, like I'm made of wet sand. My eyelids start pulling shut on their own. My breathing gets slow and deep, like I've already fallen asleep, but my mind stays awake. And the weirdest part is, my thoughts don't race, they don't wander, they just stop. It's just quiet awareness, no commentary, no inner dialogue, just me existing. Which is so ironic, because anytime I try to meditate on purpose, my brain acts like a caffeinated squirrel. Usually I'm out within a couple minutes, but this time was different. I lay back, eyes closed, letting the heaviness take over, and then this sudden bright flash, like someone took a photo right in front of my face. It only lasted a second, but it was sharp enough that my awareness kind of noticed it in the way you notice something without reacting. I think there might have been a second, softer flicker after, but the first flash is the one that really stuck. I didn't move. I didn't even think much about it. I was too tired to care. I just kept breathing slowly, waiting for sleep to finally pull me under. And then I heard a voice. Not with my ears, inside my head, but it was so distinct that it felt like it came from a real spot in the room, to my right and a little above me, which is especially strange because my bed's up against the wall, so there's not exactly a lot of space over there. It sounded like a man, definitely not my voice, and it wasn't English. My brain immediately tagged it as maybe Japanese, which is wild because I don't speak Japanese. I've never studied it. I don't even know enough to confidently recognize it. But that was the instant impression, like my mind slapped a label on it before I could argue. What I think he said, just phonetically, through my very English-speaking brain, was something like, "Hey yo Shinna." It was fast, like one smooth unit, the way a native speaker tosses something off without effort. And I couldn't tell if it was one word or a short phrase because it was over so quickly. The shock jolted me like an electric current. I snapped my eyes open and grabbed my phone immediately, and typed it out because I was afraid I'd forget the sound of it. And after that, I tried to sink back into that heavy, drifting state again. But it was like the exhaustion had been switched off. Gone. My body felt normal again, and my brain was suddenly too awake to even pretend to sleep. Later, I told my friend Mia about it, just to hear myself say it out loud, because the whole thing felt so unreal. And then, because of course I did, I also described it to ChatGPT. At first it was like, yeah, that sounds like a hypnagogic hallucination, which, fair, that's the obvious explanation. But the more I laid out the details, the less neatly it fit into that box, at least in my mind. Because here's what messes with me. I've never learned Japanese, not even casually. My room was quiet, no TV, no music, nothing playing in the background. And what's funny is, when I was younger, I studied Spanish for years, and I still have never once had a dream where someone spoke Spanish to me like that. And I keep wondering, if it was just my brain half dreaming, why would it come with that sense of location? Why did it feel like someone leaned in from that exact spot to say one quick, unfamiliar line? I don't know. I genuinely don't. All I know is, for one strange moment, in the quietest part of almost sleep, something spoke to me from the right side of my bed, and it sounded like a language I don't even have access to. And that has been sitting with me ever since. So, I've had a couple of experiences that still make my skin prickle when I talk about them, and somehow they all seem to point back to my grandfather, my dad's dad, who was gone long before I ever had a chance to meet him. He died when my dad was little, around 8, I think, and my dad, Graham, didn't talk about him much. Not in a dramatic, never speak of this again kind of way. More like, there just wasn't much to say out loud. But every now and then, when I was growing up, he'd mention him. He'd tell me he'd served in World War II, and that tiny bit of history felt like a thread I wanted to tug on forever. Graham and I both had this quiet fascination with that era. Here's the thing. I have this memory that is too vivid to be fuzzy nostalgia. I'm a kid, maybe 5. I'm in my dad's little office space, the one that always smelled faintly like paper and dust and whatever cologne he wore back then. He's showing me a photograph, black and white. A young man in uniform, leaning casually against a railing like someone snapped the picture during a break. Like he was trying to look relaxed, even though the uniform made everything feel serious. And I remember the feeling of it too, like I was being let in on something important, even if I didn't have the words for it yet. That photo, in my mind, lived in my dad's office. My dad kept all kinds of memorabilia down there. Old coins, little trinkets, random keepsakes in drawers that squeaked when you opened them. And the office always felt busy. Not scary. Never haunted house scary. Just like the air had too many thoughts in it. Like if you stayed quiet long enough, something might try to speak up. I didn't hang around down there much because it overwhelmed me. Again, not malicious. More like walking into a crowded room where everyone is talking at once, and you can't tell who's talking to you. Years later, in my 20s, I'm dating this guy named Eli. I'm working on a short story set around World War II, doing research, asking my dad questions, trying to build something that felt true. At some point, Eli and I are talking about my grandfather, and I'm like, wait, there's that photo. I should show you. That day, my dad had asked me to stop by and let his dogs out. So Eli comes with me, and I take him downstairs, already picturing exactly where the photo should be. Shelf, right side, near the little cluster of keepsakes. I walk in, I go right to it, and it's not there. Not even like it had been moved and left a dusty rectangle behind. It was just not there. I remember standing there, staring too long, doing that weird blink you do when you're waiting for your eyes to correct a mistake. The next day I asked my dad, casually at first, "Hey, where'd you move that photo of your dad?" And he goes, "What photo?" I kind of laugh, like he's teasing me. "The one in your office, the black and white photo, your dad in uniform." He stares at me, confused, and then he says something that made my stomach drop. He tells me he only ever had one photo of his dad. Only one. And he lost it when he was in his 20s. His car got stolen, and his wallet was inside. The car was recovered later, but the wallet was empty. Everything gone, including the photo. And here's what really messed with me. I described the picture anyway. The uniform, the pose, the railing, that exact relaxed lean. My dad goes pale, like genuinely pale, and he says, That's exactly what it looked like." Then he swears to me he never showed me that photo. Not once. He said it wasn't around when I was born. He didn't have it anymore. There weren't backups, no copies, nothing framed somewhere else. I text my sister, Mallory, right away. "Do you remember Dad having a photo of Grandpa in the office?" I'm not even exaggerating when I say I lost sleep over this. I wasn't just unsettled, I was disturbed, because I can still see that photograph. I could sketch it, the lighting in it, the angle, the whole thing. And I was so sure it would be there when I brought Eli downstairs that it felt like reality had glitched. After that, I didn't go over to my dad's place for a while. But then one day I'm nearby, and I've got time to kill before someone's picking me up. I live far enough away that going home would have been pointless, so I ask my dad if I can take a quick nap. He's like, "Sure, crash on the basement couch." So I do. I'm lying there half asleep, eyes closed, brain floating, when I feel someone walk by. You know that feeling? The soft shift in the air, the subtle sound of footsteps, the awareness of a presence moving through the room. I assume it's my dad. Then I hear, more than hear, sense, someone sit down in the chair right beside the couch. And it makes me feel weirdly comforted. Warm, like, "Aw, he must miss me. He's hanging out down here while I nap." And then a man's voice, kind of warped, like it wasn't coming through clean, says, very plainly, "Your mare's going to win today." I open my eyes so fast my vision swims. My whole body goes ice cold, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees in a second. And the worst part was, I didn't recognize the voice. It wasn't my dad, not even close. I sat straight up, heart hammering, staring at that chair like I could force logic to reappear if I looked hard enough. I didn't. I grabbed my things and ran out of the basement like a kid again, like I couldn't stand to feel that busy air wrap around me one more time. And later that day, because of course this is the part that makes you want to laugh and scream at the same time, my horse actually did win. I haven't been back to that house since, and I haven't had anything else like that happen again. But sometimes I'll be doing something completely normal, folding laundry, walking through a quiet hallway, and that image flashes in my mind. That black and white photo that, according to everyone else, didn't exist in my lifetime. And I get chills all over again, because I still can't explain how I remember something so clearly, when apparently there was nothing there to remember. So, this happened to me and my cousin about a year ago, and I still don't really know what to do with it, except tell it like it felt. It was late, like really late, and my cousin, let's call him Dylan, and I were sitting around with a couple beers, just talking the way you do when the world's quiet and your guard is down. Somehow we drifted into old memories, and then we started talking about my brother, Noah. Noah died when he was 17. It had been a couple years by then, but honestly, grief doesn't exactly follow a calendar. And I remember saying something I'd said before, but that night it hit different. I told Dylan, I always wished I could have done a shot with him someday. Like a dumb little brother wish, you know? Nothing huge, just one of those small moments you imagine you'll get someday, and then life doesn't give it to you. At some point, Dylan checked his phone for the time, and he goes, "Dude, it's 3:12. And I swear the air changed, because 3:12 a.m. was the exact time Noah passed away. We just stared at the screen for a second, and then we did that thing people do when something is too heavy to hold, made a joke. Like, well, that's not creepy at all. And then Dylan, half laughing, goes, maybe he's listening. And I don't know who said it first, but suddenly it was decided. We were going to the cemetery. Not in some dramatic way, more like, fine. If I never got the chance when he was alive, then maybe we'd do it anyway. Just once. Bring a couple little bottles and sit with him like he was still part of the night. The cemetery was about a half-hour walk from my place, and the whole way there we talked about the big questions. What happens after you die? Whether heaven is real, whether people can somehow still hear you. The kind of talk you don't usually have in daylight. And we also started messing around, asking for a sign. Not like we were praying, exactly. More like tossing a request into the dark and seeing if anything tossed back. I remember saying, if you're here, give us something obvious. Like, I don't know, an animal doing something weird right over our heads. Nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. We got to the grave and it was quiet in that deep, serious way cemeteries are at night. We stood there for a second, and then I just talked. I told Noah we missed him. Told him I still thought about him all the time. Told him I was sorry for all the moments we didn't get. And then we took the shots. Just the two of us, standing there, making room for him anyway. While we were there, Dylan noticed a little toy sitting near the headstone, this small toy pickup truck. He picked it up carefully, like it mattered, and he said, "This is the truck he used to talk about, right?" And it hit me in the chest, because yeah, Noah had always been obsessed with that kind of truck. He used to say that someday he'd get one, same style, same vibe. Like he could already see himself behind the wheel. So we left the toy where it was, said our goodbyes, and started walking back toward the gate. And this is where things got weird. We were only a few steps from the gate when something tiny smacked into my cheek. Like a little bug, not painful, just unexpected. I almost made a joke, but it was literally just a bug, so I brushed it off and kept walking. The second we passed through the gate, a bird suddenly burst out from the bushes like it had been waiting there. It shot down the street in this straight, deliberate line, low and fast, like it had somewhere to be. Both of us jumped. Still half joking. But not all joking. And then I said, a bug literally flew into my face right before that. And Dylan's eyes got wide, and he goes, "Shut up. Same thing happened to me, right before the bird." We just stood there for a second and then laughed, because what else do you do when the universe gets oddly specific? We actually said out loud, like idiots, like kids, "Okay, Noah, thank you. We got it." But then the bird kept going, and something in us just followed. Like, all right, if we're doing this, we're doing this. We walked down the street it had flown into, and at the end, right at an intersection, the bird was there again, sitting right in the open like it was waiting. I swear it looked at us. When we got closer, it lifted off and dipped into a side street to the left. Dylan muttered something like, "No way this is real." And without even thinking, we jogged after it. It flew straight down that next street, then rose up and vanished into the dark, like it had completed its job. And we just stopped. Quiet. Standing there in the empty street, listening to our own breathing, looking at each other like, did that just happen? And then, no exaggeration, maybe 5 seconds later, a car rolled down the street behind us. The only car we'd seen all night. And as it passed under the streetlight, we both saw it at the exact same time. It was the same kind of pickup truck Noah always wanted. Same shape, same stance, close enough that my stomach dropped. In a village that's barely awake at that hour, around 4:20 in the morning, after everything that just happened. Dylan and I didn't even speak. We just turned our heads and watched it go by like it was some final punctuation mark. The next morning, I'm sitting on the couch with my mom, still kind of buzzing from the whole night, telling her the story. She's listening, doing that mom thing where she's trying to stay calm, but you can tell she's feeling it too. And right in the middle of me talking, this unusual bird, not one we normally see around our yard, lands outside and just watches us. Not for a split second, for like 20, 30 seconds. Just perched there, staring in, like it had all the time in the world. And then it flew off. And I remember trailing off mid-sentence because it felt like the night hadn't fully ended. Like whatever that was, it had followed us home. I can't even tell you what kind of bird it was. My mom might remember. And honestly, maybe there's some normal explanation for all of it. But all I know is how it felt. It felt like we asked for something small, something simple. And for one strange night, the world answered in a way that was gentle enough not to terrify us, but clear enough that we both walked away thinking the same thing. He heard us. So, this goes way back. I was still in high school, late teens, working this part-time job after classes. And my manager, his name was Darius, was just one of those guys you instantly clicked with. Calm, sharp, funny as hell. He looked out for me, but never in a preachy way. Just solid. After closing sometimes, Darius would say, "Come on, man, let's get out of here." And we'd head over to this little neighborhood bar he liked. Not some fancy place, just loud music, dim lights, a couple pool tables, regulars who all seemed to know each other. And I'd be the only white kid in there, sticking out like a sore thumb. But nobody messed with me. No tension, no weird looks, nothing. Just people having their drinks, talking, laughing. We'd have a few beers, unwind, then call it a night. Now, here's where it gets layered. I also knew Darius's older brother, Reggie. Big dude, like the kind of guy where you notice him the second he walks into a room. And the year before I started working under Darius, Reggie and I had gotten into a fight. Dumb teenage stuff, pride and anger and all that. I won't act like I was some tough guy. It was messy and stupid, and honestly, I don't even remember what it was about anymore. But one morning, I pulled up to pick Darius up for work. He didn't have a car at the time, and Reggie happened to be outside. I remember that moment so clearly because my stomach dropped. Like, oh great, here we go. But Reggie just looked at me, kind of surprised, and goes, "That's you?" Like he couldn't believe I was the same kid from that fight. Then he laughed, actually laughed, and said something like, "Man, you got some nerve." And that was that. No revenge, no threats, just done. After that, Darius started seeing me differently. Not in a we're best friends way, but like he was reassessing who I was. We'd grown up in different worlds on paper, but the more we talked, the more he realized we had some of the same kinds of scars. Money being tight, rough neighborhoods, The feeling that you had to be ready for anything. And once he decided you were real, he opened up. Not dramatic, not emotional speeches, just honest little pieces of his life that he didn't share with everyone. One night, we were out late, parked somewhere quiet with the windows cracked, just talking the way people do when they've had a couple beers and the world feels softer for a minute. I can't even remember what led into it, but strongly the conversation drifted to ghosts. Now, I'd grown up in an old house, like old. The kind of place with weird drafts and creaky stairs and shadows that didn't always feel like shadows. People in town had stories about it, and yeah, I had my own experiences there, real ones. But even now, I keep those details close to the chest. Still, I said enough for Darius to know I wasn't just joking around. He listened, nodding, and then he got quiet for a beat, like he was deciding whether to say something. Then he goes, "I ever tell you about the little white boy?" The way he said it, I swear, even before the story started, my skin got prickly. Darius told me this happened when he was around 12, and Reggie was maybe 7. They lived in this tiny house, 2 bedrooms, not much space, not much of anything. Sometimes they sold a bed just because that's what it was. And he said they weren't scared kids, not the type. They'd grown up having to be tough. So this one night, they're lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, and they start hearing this sound, soft at first, like a faint scratching, almost like a mouse in the wall. Darius told Reggie, "Relax, probably just something in the house." They listened, holding their breath, and Darius realized it was coming from this wardrobe at the foot of the bed. Old wooden thing, doors that never sat right. Reggie, the little one, started whispering, "Go look, go look." And Darius, trying to be the older brother, got up, walked over, and yanked the wardrobe door open. And inside, standing there like it had been waiting, was a little boy. Not a normal little boy. Darius said he was small, like maybe 6 years old, but what threw him wasn't the size, it was the color. The kid was white in a way that didn't look human. Not pale, not sick, like bright. Like he was washed in moonlight from the inside out, and he was glowing. And the weirdest part? His hands were pressed together, like he was praying. No expression, no smile, just standing there, glowing, hands together, looking straight ahead. Darius slammed the wardrobe shut and jumped back into bed, heart pounding, breathing hard, trying not to scare his brother even more. And then, this is the part he couldn't get out of his head. He looked down toward the foot of the bed, and the little boy was there now, standing right at the end of the mattress, closer than he should have been, still glowing, still with his hands pressed together, just staring at them. Darius said he felt frozen, like his body didn't belong to him, like if he moved, something worse would happen. He said Reggie was making this tiny whimpering sound, like he was trying not to cry. They just stared. No words, no footsteps, no sound. And after maybe a minute, maybe less, maybe more, time's weird when you're terrified. Darius said the glow started thinning out, like smoke in the air. The boy didn't walk away or vanish like in a movie. He just faded, like someone turned down the brightness on reality until he was gone. The room went dead still again, and Darius said neither of them slept after that. They just sat there until morning, watching every corner of the room. When they told their mom, she didn't believe them, told them they'd had a nightmare, told them to stop telling stories, told them not to talk like that. But Darius wasn't laughing when he told me. Not even close. He was rattled, even all those years later, like the memory still sat heavy in his chest. And then life moved on, like it does. Years later, this part still hurts to think about. Reggie ended up dying out behind my old place. He'd been hunting in the woods nearby, maybe half a mile out. They found him with a gunshot wound from his own rifle, ruled it an accident. By then, I didn't even work at that job anymore. Darius and I had drifted apart, one of those slow, messy separations where nobody has a single moment to point at. Just distance, time, different lives. And I never got the chance to tell him how sorry I was about his brother. I carried that regret for a long time. I never saw Darius again, but I never forgot what he told me. That was the only paranormal story he ever shared. Before that and after that, he wasn't the kind of guy who talked about ghosts or spirits or any of it. So when he told me this, I believed that he believed it, completely. And honestly, I've thought about it for decades, because I know plenty of people roll their eyes at this stuff. I get it. I'm not trying to convince anyone who's determined not to believe. I'm just saying, people see things. People experience things. Too many, too often, across too many places and generations for it all to be nothing. Maybe it's not ghosts the way movies sell it. Maybe it's something else, something we don't have language for yet. All I know is, Darius wasn't making it up, and that story stayed with him. I'm telling it now for the same reason I've kept it in my heart all this time. Because if you've ever seen something you can't explain, and you've spent years wondering if you're the only one, you're probably not. So, I grew up way out in Alaska. And when I say remote, I mean remote. Our house was basically a cabin planted in the wilderness, with mountains on all sides and this long, brutal highway that turned into an icy nightmare in winter. The nearest town was hundreds of miles away, and if my parents had to go in for supplies or appointments, they'd usually stay overnight because nobody in their right mind wants to drive a mountain pass after dark. Back then, I was the oldest kid, so when my parents left, I was the one in charge. And honestly, that responsibility sat on my chest like a weight. We were hours from a hospital. The neighbors were far enough away that yelling would have been pointless, and even if you did reach them, you couldn't exactly count on help showing up quickly. I used to lie awake thinking about everything that could go wrong. Fire, earthquakes, someone breaking in. Alaska can feel like the Wild West sometimes, and as a teenager, that's not a comforting thought. And I need to tell you this part too, because it matters. Weird things followed me. Not just in that house. Almost everywhere I lived, I'd see things, feel things. My grandpa, his name was Walt, and I swear that man was genuinely psychic. He'd talk about visions like they were weather reports, and sometimes they'd come true in ways that made your stomach drop. He'd walk into a place and immediately go, "Nope, bad energy here." I always figured I was the only grandkid who inherited that sensitivity, whether I wanted it or not. Anyway, this happened when I was 14, winter. My parents were gone overnight, and I was already stressed before the sun even went down. I remember pacing, checking locks, checking the stove, checking that everyone had brushed their teeth and was actually settling in. My two youngest siblings, let's call them Mara and Owen, were still little, and I was terrified something would happen to them while I was in charge. That fear showed up in my dreams, too. For as long as I could remember, I'd have nightmares about the house burning down or collapsing in an earthquake, or someone coming in and me not being able to save them. But around that age, the nightmares got worse. Like weekly. Not just bad dream bad, more like wake up sobbing, heart hammering, throat raw from screaming bad. They were so realistic it felt like my brain was rehearsing tragedies. So that night, I did what I always did when I was overwhelmed. I pulled Mara and Owen into my room and had them sleep in my bed with me. It sounds sweet, but it was really me trying to keep everyone close where I could protect them. And I stayed awake for a long time, staring at my doorway like I could will the night into behaving. Then sometime after midnight, maybe 1, maybe 2, the whole cabin shifted. That's the only way I know how to describe it. It's like the air got heavier. My skin prickled. The hairs on my arms lifted. That deep, instinctive feeling that something is wrong, even if you can't explain why. I'd felt it before in other places, but that night it was stronger, sharper, like the house itself was holding its breath. I just lay there, tense, staring at the dark hallway beyond my door. I knew where my dad kept a handgun hidden. He'd shown me just in case. I knew how to use it. But the weird thing was, this didn't feel like a human threat. The gun didn't make me feel any safer at all. It felt like, whatever this was, it wouldn't matter. I must have dozed off at some point because I snapped awake suddenly, drenched in cold sweat. My eyes went straight to the clock. 3 a.m. Exactly. And immediately, my stomach dropped because the bed was empty. I ran into the hallway and checked the other kids' room. Sometimes Mara would wander and curl up with one of the older ones. But every bed was empty. Blankets tossed back like someone had gotten up in a hurry. No sleepy voices. No shifting. Nothing. I ran downstairs calling their names. No, screaming their names. My voice echoed in the cabin like it didn't belong there. I checked the living room, the kitchen, the downstairs bedroom, the entryway. Every corner felt wrong. Every room was silent in that dead, heavy way silence gets when you're alone and you know you shouldn't be. And I remember this one horrible thought cutting through everything. They're gone. You lost them. Then, like someone snapped their fingers, I woke up for real. I sat straight up in bed, gasping, and immediately looked beside me. Mara and Owen were there, sleeping peacefully, warm, breathing. The blankets pulled up to their chins like nothing had ever happened. The relief hit me so hard it almost made me dizzy. I actually put my hand on Mara's shoulder just to feel her there, like I needed proof I wasn't still dreaming. And then I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. exactly. That's when the relief started draining away again, because right then, clear as day, I heard a baby crying. Not a faint sound, not something distant. A baby crying loudly, like it was only a few feet away. Like it was just outside my open bedroom door, around the corner in the hallway. And my first instinct, my automatic human instinct, was go help. Because you hear a baby crying and something inside you immediately wants to fix it. Find it. Pick it up. Make it stop hurting. But my entire body screamed, "Don't move." My skin crawled. My chest tightened. I felt that same heavy, wrong feeling pressing in from the hallway, like the cabin was watching me. And in that instant, my half-asleep brain finally caught up with reality. There were no babies in our house. Mara was the youngest, and she was 5. There wasn't a neighbor nearby with an infant. There wasn't anyone who could have brought a baby to our cabin in the middle of nowhere without us knowing. And even if there had been, why would a baby be crying right outside my door at 3 in the morning? The crying kept going. That awful, real infant cry. The kind that makes you picture a tiny red face, the hitching breath, that little gasp like they're trying to breathe and sob at the same time. Then the wailing again. It sounded so real it made my eyes water. It pulled at every protective instinct I had. But I stayed, frozen. I lay there staring at the doorway, not blinking, barely breathing, listening to it cry and cry and cry. And I didn't move a muscle until, at some point, I must have passed out from sheer exhaustion. When I woke up again, it was daylight. Merciful, ordinary daylight. The cabin felt normal. The air felt light again. No crying, no heaviness, no sense of being watched. I checked on everyone. All of my siblings were fine, laughing, sleepy, asking for breakfast like it was any other morning. And I remember asking my brother, he was 12, if he heard anything weird in the night. Like, did you hear a baby crying? He looked at me like I'd sprouted a second head and just went, no. And the thing is, plenty of strange things happened in that house. Enough that at the time, I almost filed it away as just another entry in the Alaska Cabin Weirdness folder. But as an adult, that night sticks with me more than anything. Sometimes I think something intelligent was trying to lure me into the hallway, like it knew exactly what would make me move. Fear first, then a helpless baby's cry, like it was testing which hook would work. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it just wanted to feed on the fear and panic it knew it could get from me. Either way, when I go back there now, I still notice things sometimes. A feeling, a shadow that doesn't match the light, a sense that something is standing just out of sight. But it's not as intense anymore, and I've thought a lot about why. I think it's because my biggest fear back then, losing my siblings, doesn't have the same power over me now. They're grown, they're safe, and whatever that presence was, it doesn't get the same meal out of me anymore. And honestly, that's the only rule I've learned that consistently works with stuff like this. Don't give it what it wants. Don't be afraid. Don't chase it. Don't answer when it calls you. Hey everyone, welcome to That Paranormal channel. How's your day going? I've been looking forward to this, just sitting down with you and sharing paranormal experiences from all over. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in their stories, and please keep them coming. They're the best gifts you could give this channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our latest videos. I honestly love this job. Now, turn on a small nightlight, pull the blanket up around you, and dive into today's paranormal experiences. So, let me start by saying this up front. I'm not someone who goes looking for ghosts. I'm pretty skeptical about anything afterlife or supernatural. I like explanations I can touch and measure. But then there's this story. I still don't know exactly what happened. There was no clear sighting, no booming voice from the sky, just an experience that left a crack in my certainty. This was a little over 20 years ago. It started with a fire. My wife at the time, her name was Hannah, and I lived on the 3rd floor of this old apartment building. We were young, broke, and just figuring life out with one toddler and another baby on the way. One night, the apartment below us caught fire. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. The fire didn't reach our place structurally, but the smoke did. Thick, black, oily smoke. It crawled into everything: clothes, books, furniture. The apartment reeked. It was basically unlivable. The complex felt bad about it and worked with us. They let us move into an upgraded unit for the same rent. Honestly, at the time, it felt like a lucky break. The new place was a 2-story unit. First floor was the living room and kitchen. Second floor had the bedrooms. The stairs went up along a wall that our bedroom shared, so at night, you could hear every creak and footstep in the stairwell. It felt kind of cozy, actually, like the house itself was breathing around us. For about a week, it was fine. Stressful because, moving plus pregnancy plus toddler, but normal. Then one morning, Hannah came to me looking shaken. Not just had a weird dream shaken, more like I just saw a car accident shaken. She said, "I had this dream last night and I can't stop thinking about it." In her dream, she said she woke up in our bed, in that exact apartment. Same dim light from the window, same cheap blinds, same shadows on the wall. It didn't feel like a dream to her. It felt like she had just woken up for real. At the foot of the bed, she saw 3 people standing there. Not glowing, not monstrous, just people. Watching her. Studying her. She couldn't move or speak, but she could see them clearly. Then she heard something on the stairs. She described it as heavy, like something big was coming up the steps. Not a person. The sound had weight to it. She said it reminded her of an excited dog, those quick, eager steps, but it sounded bigger, and it was making these strange, happy, almost playful noises. Not quite a growl, not quite a bark. Behind the bedroom door, she could hear this thing getting closer with each step. And the 3 people at the foot of the bed started getting excited. Their breathing changed. Their shoulders tightened. It was like they were waiting for it, like they'd been anticipating this thing finally reaching the room. Just as Hannah felt that it was about to burst through the doorway and into our bedroom, she woke up. Heart pounding, drenched in sweat. Now, here's an important thing to know about her. She's a very devout Christian. The kind who believes that a moral, faithful person shouldn't fear the devil. The devil should be the one trembling. She's not dramatic. She doesn't share every anxious thought. So for her to sit there and admit, "I'm scared, this dream rattled me," was a big deal. Honestly, it was a little humiliating for her to even say it out loud. I did what I could. Listened, held her, told her it was just a dream. I figured it would fade in a couple of days, the way most dreams do. It didn't. About a week later, she came to me again. She looked worse, tired, wired, like she'd been holding her breath for days. She said, "I feel something in here with me, all the time." Not like a normal, "this place feels a little creepy" kind of vibe. She described it as an intense presence, like someone standing just over her shoulder, watching her. She said it was strongest when she was alone in the apartment, and especially near the stairs and our bedroom. And the really disturbing part? She said it felt like it was getting stronger every day. She told me straight up, "I don't know how long I can handle this." Now, moving again at that point was not realistic. New lease, new baby coming, money tight. Explaining to the landlord that we wanted to transfer apartments, again, because the place felt haunted, didn't feel like a winning strategy. But I took her seriously. Not because I suddenly believed in ghosts, but because I believed in her. She was clearly not making this up for attention. I'm skeptical, but I didn't grow up in a skeptical house. My mom is very open to spiritual and supernatural things. She'd told me a few stories over the years, experiences she couldn't explain, things that scared her. So I asked Hannah, "Do you want me to talk to my mom? See if she has any ideas?" Hannah does not like asking my mom for help. Let's just say their personalities didn't blend well. The fact that she immediately said, "Yes, please," told me just how shaken she really was. I called my mom and told her everything. The fire, the move, the dream, the feeling in the apartment. She listened quietly the whole time, which was rare for her. Usually she'd jump in with questions halfway through. When I finished, she paused and said, "Do you remember that thing that used to hang over our hallway when you were a kid? That round piece with the design on it?" I did. Growing up, we moved a lot, but that thing followed us from house to house. It was always hanging somewhere high, above a staircase or near a ceiling. It was about the size of a large dinner plate, woven out of thin, dark reeds. In the center, the strands formed this almost geometric wolf shape. As a kid, I thought it looked cool and kind of mysterious. I never really asked what it was. She said, "That's not just decoration. That was given to me." She went on to tell me something I'd never heard before. Around the time I was born, she said she'd gone through what she called a very bad spiritual situation. That's all she called it. No details. And that was unsettling because she'd shared other weird stories pretty openly, but not this one. Anyway, she said she ended up talking to a Native American medicine man someone had connected her with. He listened to what she was going through, made this talisman and told her, "Hang it at the highest point in your home." She did. According to her, whatever had been tormenting her stopped. Just stopped. The feeling lifted. Life settled down. And the talisman had hung in our house ever since. She said, "I'm going to send it to you. Put it in the highest place in your apartment." The next day, a package showed up. Inside was that woven circle from my childhood. Seeing it again actually made me feel weirdly emotional, kind of like bumping into an old friend who knows things you don't. Our highest point in the apartment was above the stairwell, near the ceiling that overlooked both floors. So that's where we hung it. It looked almost too small for the big white wall, but it was there, watching over the stairs. Hannah stood under it, just looking up at it for a minute. Later that evening, I asked her, "How do you feel?" She took this deep breath and said, "Better, a lot better." Like something loosened its grip. For a while, things were normal again. The talisman just became part of the background, like a weird family heirloom that happened to live with us now. Several months later, I got a job offer in another state. It was a good opportunity, so we decided to move. We slowly packed up the apartment, boxes everywhere, kids' toys in random bags, that phase where everything looks worse before it looks better. On our last day there, we were down to the final odds and ends. Cleaning supplies, lamps, the stuff you always underestimate. We'd packed the car pretty tightly. Hannah buckled both kids, our toddler and our now newborn, into their car seats. They both fell asleep on the drive over, so she stayed in the car with them while I went in to finish up. The talisman was still hanging above the stairs. I remember standing at the bottom of the steps and thinking, if I don't take that down now, I'm going to forget it. And honestly, while I had taken Hannah's fear seriously, I still wasn't convinced the talisman was anything more than a powerful placebo. So I went upstairs, carefully took it down, carried it out to the car, and set it gently on the floor behind the driver's seat. Then I went back inside to grab another armful of stuff. As soon as I stepped into the apartment, something felt off. The air felt thicker. The silence sounded different, if that makes sense. Like the whole place was holding its breath. I brushed it off, told myself I was just tired, stressed, overthinking things. I grabbed a box, took it to the car, and came back in. The second time in, the feeling intensified. I felt like I'd walked into a room where someone had just been screaming and then abruptly stopped when I opened the door. No sound, just this leftover vibration of anger. I could feel my heart rate climbing, and I hadn't even done anything yet. By the third trip, it was bad. I walked in, and every hair on my arms and neck stood up. It felt like the walls were leaning in. The best way I can describe it is this. It felt like something in that apartment was aware of me, and furious. Not just irritated, not just, "I don't like you." It felt like seething rage focused right between my shoulder blades. And it didn't feel unfamiliar. It felt like something that had been there quietly in the background, numbed or muffled, was now fully awake again. And it knew I'd taken away whatever had been keeping it in check. I remember thinking, very clearly, oh, it wasn't gone. It was sleeping. I was supposed to mop the kitchen floor, vacuum one more time, just basic move-out cleaning. I tried to push through the fear. I told myself I was being ridiculous. But my body was not buying that logic. My stomach knotted up. My hands were shaking a little. I felt genuinely nauseous, standing there with a vacuum in my hand. At some point, I just hit a wall internally. I set the vacuum down, left the mop and cleaning supplies in the corner of the kitchen, and walked out. On my way past the leasing office, I dropped our keys into the after-hours drop box. I didn't look back at the building. I remember thinking, they can keep the mop. I got in the car, trying to act normal. Hannah looked at me and said, "You okay?" I just said, "Yeah, we're done. Let's go." We drove away, talisman in the car, kids sleeping in the back, and that was it. We never set foot in that apartment again. To this day, I don't have a clean explanation. I can line things up and say, maybe it was stress, maybe it was suggestion, maybe Hannah's fear rubbed off on me. Maybe growing up with that talisman made my brain connect dots that weren't really there. And for a skeptic, I'll admit, that's a hard feeling to shake. So, let me take you back a bit. This happened, a little over 10 years ago now? And even today, my dad and I still bring it up like it was last week. We're from England, right? And that year we'd gone on holiday to the States. We flew into Los Angeles, stayed with some family friends just outside the city to save money, and one evening we all decided, let's drive down to this pier and boardwalk area by the ocean. You know the kind of place. Fairy lights strung overhead, street musicians, loads of little shops and restaurants, the whole thing buzzing. There were about 7 of us in total. Me, my dad, my mom, my little brother Jame, and our family friends. By the time we got there, it was properly dark. The air was still warm, there was music drifting in from somewhere, and the smell of food everywhere. We eventually found this busy restaurant, some kind of grill place, and joined the line outside to wait for a table. So my dad, Mark, is standing in front of me, holding Jame on his hip. Jame was maybe 3 at the time, half asleep, clinging to him. I'm just behind them, kind of zoning out, people watching. And then, this guy appears. Now, I say appears, but I did see him walking toward us in my peripheral vision. He was wearing this faded red t-shirt with a little logo on the chest, dark cargo shorts, and battered trainers. He had a bit of a belly, looked like he might be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Skin tone kind of brown, maybe Latino, maybe native, hard to tell in that lighting. He was carrying a big shopping bag in one hand and a smaller paper bag in the other. Totally ordinary guy, right? Except his eyes. At first I didn't clock it because you don't expect it, but when he got close and lifted his head properly, I could see them. They were completely black. I mean, no whites at all, just 2 solid jet black orbs, like someone had drawn them on with ink, like holes. And the second I registered that, something in me just switched on. I can't really explain this part logically. On paper, he did not look threatening. He's got shopping bags, he's alone, he's not shouting or anything. But my body reacted before my brain did. My whole nervous system just went, danger. Hard up, muscles tight, that buzzing feeling in your chest when you know something's not right. I remember thinking, I'm going to have to step in. I might actually have to fight this guy. Which is ridiculous because, again, he wasn't doing anything yet. But then I glanced at my dad, and I could see he felt it too. Now, my dad and I both trained martial arts for years, and there's this very particular way someone shifts their stance when they're ready for trouble, even if they're trying to be casual. He did that. Weight slightly adjusted, shoulders loose but prepared, eyes tracking every little movement. He still had Jame in his arms, but it was like his whole body was quietly saying, if something happens, I'm ready. The man with the black eyes walks right up to my dad. He doesn't look at anyone else, doesn't even glance my way at first. He stops just inside that bubble of personal space where someone's now close enough to grab you if they want to. Then he says, in this weirdly calm voice, what do you think is the difference between a man and a human being? Now, this is the part that's hard to explain without sounding completely mad. I remember the rhythm of his voice, the way his mouth moved. I remember my dad answering slowly, struggling to find words, asking him what he meant. I remember the pauses, the feeling that it was a very strange, intense conversation. But the actual content? gone. Completely blank. It's like he put up some kind of mental curtain and I was stuck on the outside of it. What makes it even stranger is that, apparently, no one else saw him. We were near the back of the line, but not far away from the others, maybe 3-4 meters max. There were people walking past us constantly, waiters weaving through, families queuing. You'd think someone would have turned their head and gone, "Who's that bloke with the weird eyes talking to them?" But they didn't. Afterwards, when we sat down and I brought it up, my mom was like, "What, man?" Our friends were the same. They remembered us stepping out of the line a little, maybe, but no one recalled seeing him at all. While we were talking to him, it felt like time changed. That's the best way I can put it. Not in a dramatic sci-fi way with everything freezing, but more like the whole world went a bit syrupy, slower, muted. The sound of the crowd seemed to pull back, like we were under a dome. I remember being hyper-aware of tiny details, the way the fairy lights flickered, the feeling of the wooden boards under my feet, the weight of the humid air. Like everything around us was on slow motion, but the conversation was happening in its own pocket. At one point, my dad said later, it felt like they were just standing there for ages. I remember these long pauses where my dad was trying to answer whatever the man was asking. Something about what we really are, and if we think we're only flesh, or something along those lines. But when I try to replay it, I just get that first question, and then static. Eventually, my dad told me his side of it. He said the guy kept circling around this idea that there's a difference between man, in the everyday sense, and human in some broader sense. Like there are things that look like us but aren't quite us, or that we ourselves are more than we understand. He mentioned things like altered genetics, or beings that slip between what we'd call physical and something else. My dad was trying to follow, trying to answer honestly, but he said he was just as on edge as I was the whole time, ready to protect me and my brother if needed. And then there was this one moment that really stuck with him. Apparently, while the man was talking, my dad thought, if this goes sideways, I'll have to put Jame down and hit him first before he can hurt the kids. It wasn't a plan he said out loud, obviously. It was just a protective dad thought. Right after that, the man stopped mid-sentence, looked at my dad directly, and said, "I am not your enemy." Just like that. Very matter of fact. Not offended, almost reassuring. And then he turned his head to look straight at me. Now, from my point of view, all I saw were those black eyes. But Dad told me later that when the guy looked from him to me, he saw, this is going to sound wild, something like a vortex of light behind the man's eyes. Not a glow, not a reflection from the restaurant sign, but a sort of swirling tunnel, like he was looking through the man's face into something else. Dad swears he wasn't imagining it. He said it was there for a second or two, and then it was gone, and the guy's eyes just went back to being these empty black pools. And literally, as he stepped out of our little bubble, the world snapped back. The noise of the crowd rushed in again, clattering dishes, laughter, music. The hostess from the restaurant suddenly called our name, like it had been timed to the second. "Table for 7, she shouted, cheerful, totally unaware that my dad and I were standing there in that aftershock feeling of, what just happened? We went in, sat down, and the first thing my dad and I did, before we even looked at the menus, was stare at each other like, "Did you just..." And we both started talking at once. We compared notes right there at the table. The feeling of danger, the fight response, the time distortion, the way no one else saw him, the black eyes, the first question. Dad told me what he remembered of the conversation. I told him how I couldn't recall anything after that opening line. We both had that same strange sense that the man wasn't normal, whatever that means. And then life just went on. For years, I barely thought about it. Every so often, something would trigger the memory. A crowded street at night, someone asking a deep question out of nowhere, and it would all flood back. And I'd text my dad, or he'd bring it up over a beer, and we'd go, "Still can't explain it, can we?" We still can't. All I know is, that night, on a busy boardwalk in California, surrounded by hundreds of people, it felt like time bent, the world tuned out, and someone, or something, stepped in just long enough to ask us a question we still don't really know how to answer. What's the difference between a man and a human? Okay, so let me tell you something that still kind of freaks me out. In a good way. When I was a kid, I was about 11, so this was around 2010. I had this really strange dream. Not scary, just different. It felt weirdly familiar, like remembering a place you're sure you've never been to. In the dream, I'm just sitting on this old wooden bench in a park. Thing is, I never went to that park, not in real life. It's quiet, a little cloudy, and I'm just sitting there, doing nothing. Then this older man, maybe in his 70s, walks over. He's wearing this dark green suit that looks slightly old-fashioned, like something from an old photograph. He sits down right next to me, like he's done it 1,000 times. What really stuck with me was his throat. There was this thick, pale scar curving around his neck, like something tight had been around it for too long. Even in the dream, I remember thinking, that must have hurt. I don't remember every word of our conversation now, just flashes of it. I remember feeling completely calm with him, like I'd known him forever. We were talking about my mom, about school, normal little things. At one point, I remember asking him, "What happened to your neck?" And his face changed. He looked sad and tired, but also sort of proud. Near the end of the dream, he turned toward me, reached out, and took my hand in both of his. His hands were warm and a bit rough, like he'd done a lot of work in his life. And then he said to me, very clearly, "I'll always look after you, you and Lenny." And in that moment, when he touched my hand, I got chills all over my body. That's actually the part that still gets me, because that feeling was so intense it woke me up. And even now, telling you this, I can almost feel it again. The next morning, I wandered into the kitchen while my mom was emptying the dishwasher. I was still kind of shaken up, so I just started telling her about the dream, every detail I could remember. The bench, the suit, the scar, how he spoke to me. She turned to look at me, and I will never forget her face. She went completely pale, and she actually dropped a plate on the floor. It shattered, and she didn't even react to the noise at first. She just stared at me. She asked me to describe him again, slowly. So I did. The way he looked, the way he sat, the scar on his neck. And then I mentioned that he said he would always look after me and Lenny. My mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. She asked me, "He really said Lenny?" I said, "Yeah, why?" And that's when she told me that Lenny was her childhood nickname, a nickname that only her father used. Here's the thing, I never met her father. He died years before I was born. I'd seen maybe 1 or 2 photos of him in passing, but we never really talked about him much. I didn't even remember his name then, just that in the dream I somehow knew who he was. I told her about the scar and how I'd asked him what happened. In the dream, he'd told me he'd been tortured while he was in captivity, but he hadn't gone into all the details, just enough to make me feel the weight of it. My mom just broke down crying. Through the tears, she said, "He never told me that. Not like that." She explained that her father had been part of the Dutch resistance during World War II and that he'd been captured. He'd been held in a building near a square in Groningen, she named the place, like it was burned into her memory, and that he'd been interrogated by collaborators. After that, my mom started talking more about the sensitivity in our family. She says she sometimes feels negative energies in the house, and every now and then she burns incense or does little cleansing rituals. I used to roll my eyes at that stuff, honestly, but she told me her mother, my grandmother, was the same way, that she would sometimes talk to people in her sleep or wake up and know things she shouldn't know. She told me that I might have the same thing, that if I wanted to talk to him again, I'd have to open up or reach out. I didn't really know what that meant, but as a kid I tried. For years I went to sleep hoping I'd see him again on that bench, hear him call my mom Lenny one more time. But he never came back, not in that way. I kind of filed it away as a weird, powerful childhood experience. One of those family stories that only gets told late at night when people are already emotional. I didn't fully believe it, but I didn't fully disbelieve it either. It just lived somewhere in the back of my mind. Then today happened. Today we had a funeral for my dad's uncle. It was held at this cemetery I'd never been to before. Actually, it was my first time at any graveyard in my entire life. I'm almost 25 now, and somehow I'd managed to avoid them until today. From the moment we walked in, I felt off. Not terrified, just really uncomfortable. Heavy, like the air was thicker somehow. I tried to brush it off as just nerves and sadness. After the service, when everyone was kind of standing around in that quiet, awkward way people do after funerals, I suddenly thought of my grandfather, my mom's dad, the man from my dream. I knew he was buried in the same cemetery, so I asked my parents if we could go find his grave. We walked around for a bit until my mom recognized his name on a stone. It was simple, not flashy or anything. Just his name, his dates, and a small symbol. I stood there, and for the first time in my life, I was physically in front of him. I didn't know what to say, so I just kind of awkwardly introduced myself, out loud. I said something like, "Hi, I'm your granddaughter. We, met once, in a dream." I felt ridiculous, but also strangely emotional. And then, as I'm standing there, this gust of wind blows through the trees. It's chilly, like you'd expect in a graveyard. But on my right shoulder, I suddenly feel warmth. Not just, oh, the sun came out, warmth. It felt like the weight and heat of a hand being gently placed there. Firm, comforting. Like someone standing slightly behind me saying, without words, "I'm here." I froze. My whole body lit up with goosebumps, but my shoulder felt safe. I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear some booming voice from the sky or whatever. It was just that touch, that impossible, gentle pressure that lasted a few seconds and then faded away. I stood there, staring at his name, and I just whispered, "Thank you." I didn't even fully know what I was thanking him for. Looking after my mom? Watching over me? Showing up once when I needed him? All of it, maybe. It's been about 6 hours since then, and I'm still sitting here with chills running up my arms every time I think about it. I've gone back and forth my whole life between believing and not believing in this kind of thing. But after today, I don't know. It's harder to just shrug it off as coincidence. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe it was grief, or suggestion, or the wind doing something weird at exactly the right moment. But maybe, just maybe, it really was an old man in a dark green suit, still keeping his promise to look after me and his little Lenny from wherever he is now. And honestly, I kind of hope it was. So, it's 7:54 in the morning right now, and I still haven't slept. I've just been lying here replaying everything that happened last night, and honestly, I'm still freaked out. Okay, let me back up a bit. There are 4 of us living in this apartment. Me, my older brother Marco, my younger brother Eli, and my little sister, Lena. It's a cozy 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom place we moved into about 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, but it's home. We've never really had any serious issues in this building. No rats, no possums in the walls, nothing like that. The worst we've seen has been a couple of earthworms that snuck in when it was raining, and the occasional cockroach that we immediately declare war on. Past tenants apparently didn't have any rodent problems either. So, last night, well, technically this morning, it was around 12:10 a.m. or so. Things were pretty normal. I was in the shared bedroom with Lena, and Eli, who works this weird 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. remote shift with people in different time zones, had just finished work. He came into our room, dropped onto his mattress, and said something like, "Wow, it's already past midnight?" Lena heard that and was like, "Okay, we should really go to sleep now." I usually sleep when Lena does, habit from us getting ready for bed at the same time. But then I realized I hadn't brushed my teeth yet. So I told her, "I'll be right back, just gonna brush," and headed downstairs. And literally the moment I stepped off the last stair, I got this weird, heavy feeling, like the air had changed somehow. For context, this wasn't the first time I'd gone downstairs alone at night to brush my teeth. I do it all the time. And yeah, it's normal to feel a little creeped out when you're alone in the dark. I'm not new to that. But this was different. It wasn't just, oh, it's dark and spooky. It felt off. So the layout is kind of important here. When you come down the stairs, the bathroom is to the left. The kitchen is a bit farther down, on the right. And then there's this weird little empty room outside, like a storage room or something, that you can see through the kitchen window and through this tiny, high-up window in the bathroom. That little room has no light. At night, it's just pure black, like someone cut a square out of the world. Even in the daytime, it's a little unsettling, but at night, it's just pitch darkness. You feel like if you stare too long, something might look back. So I go to the kitchen sink to brush my teeth. Yeah, we do it there because the bathroom sink is tiny and the water pressure is pathetic. And while I'm brushing, I get that prickly feeling that something is watching me through the window over the sink. Again, not the first time I've had that feeling. I tell myself, "You're just paranoid, chill," and keep going. I finish up there and head to the bathroom because I really don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. needing to pee. And in the bathroom, it's calm, completely normal. That's actually what weirded me out. Usually, late at night, I get this creepy sense like something is hovering on the other side of that little upper window, just out of sight. But this time, nothing. It felt like daytime, calm, quiet, still, like the calm before a storm. Anyway, I finish my whole routine, face, skincare, bathroom, all that, and by the time I'm done, it's a little before 1 a.m. I turn off the kitchen light and start heading upstairs. Normally, I switch it off from the top before going into our room, but that night, I didn't. The switch is near the little foyer, not right by our bedroom door, and the idea of standing in the dark hallway, turning off the light, and walking blind to my room? Absolutely not. Our room light was already off because Lena was asleep, and I didn't want to wake her, so I just left the hallway light on. I go into the room, flop onto my bed, and scroll through TikTok like a responsible adult who definitely isn't ruining their sleep schedule. Eventually, my eyes start to feel heavy. I put my phone down, and I'm in that half-asleep, half-awake zone where your brain is still kind of listening. And then I hear it. This sharp little click. It sounded exactly like when someone tries to open a locked door and the lock just catches. My immediate thought was, okay, calm down. It's probably just my glasses shifting on my messy desk. They make a similar sound if they slide against something. So I force myself not to overthink it. And then, a few seconds later, something starts scratching at our bedroom door. At first, I freeze, completely. My heart is pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. I try to be logical. Maybe it's a mouse. Maybe this is the one time a rat found its way in and I'm just unlucky. It happens, right? But I know this building. We've never had rats. Ever. The scratching doesn't sound small. It's not a light little skitter at the bottom of the door. Whatever it is, it's moving around, like it's testing different spots. There's scratching around the doorknob, then in the middle of the door, then back toward the knob. I get up, because my brain is screaming at me, what if the door isn't locked? So I stumble over in the dark, my legs feeling like jelly, and reach for the knob. It's closed, locked, and I just stand there with my hand on the doorknob, listening. The scratching keeps going. It's not gentle. It's not an angry clawing either. It's insistent. Like something wants in but isn't in a rush. Almost like a dog pawing at a door. But here's the thing. We don't have a dog. Marco's girlfriend has a small dog, yeah, and sometimes she stays over with her and they sleep in his separate room. But before I went into my room, I only saw one pair of slippers outside Marco's door. Just his. No girlfriend, no dog. And even if the dog had been here, she's tiny, very clingy, and very vocal. She would have been whining or barking. Also, she definitely couldn't reach as high as the middle of our door, let alone around the knob. And then it gets worse. There's this thin strip of light at the bottom of our door because the hallway light is still on outside. I'm staring at it, trying to calm myself down, and suddenly that strip of light just disappears. Like something big is blocking it, standing directly in front of our door. It's like whatever is scratching is now also standing there, right on the other side. At this point, I am done. I'm not trying to be brave. I'm not trying to be the main character. I'm just a terrified person in pajamas who does not want to get dragged into some horror movie side plot. So I do the only thing that makes sense to me. I wake up Lena. I crawl over to her bed and start whispering urgently. Lena, wake up. Wake up, please. My voice is shaking so badly that I wake Eli up too. They both sit up and listen. And I can tell immediately that they hear it, because their faces change. It's not one of those moments where they're like, it's just the pipes, or you're imagining things. The scratching is loud. Wrong. It's circling the door like it owns the hallway. Then Eli decides he's going to be that guy, the horror movie character you scream at through the screen. He grabs his flashlight, stands up, and starts walking toward the door like he's about to negotiate with the unknown. I whisper, "What are you doing? Don't open it. Seriously, Eli, don't." I'm imagining the door flying open and something just rushing past him straight at us. He puts his hand on the knob. I'm standing there holding my breath, absolutely convinced this is the moment my life turns into one of those based on a true story documentaries. He twists the lock, opens the door, and nothing. The scratching stops instantly. The hallway is empty. The light is still on. No rat, no dog, no person. Nothing on the ceiling, nothing in the corners. Just silence. There's this weird mix of relief and panic inside me. On one hand, thank God, there's nothing there. On the other, if it wasn't there, where did it go? And what if opening the door just let it in? Eli, being Eli, steps fully into the hallway. He checks the staircase. He goes downstairs, looks in the kitchen, in the bathroom, even peeks through the window into that dark little outside room. He checks the front door. Everything is locked. Everything looks normal. He comes back up after a while and shrugs like, "There's nothing. It's fine." We close our bedroom door again. A few minutes later, the scratching starts up. Same door, same pattern. At that point, I'm holding back tears. My brain is just playing every horror movie trope I've ever seen on repeat. You know that scene where everyone investigates the noise, finds nothing, and then 5 minutes later something jumps out of the closet? That's exactly what it felt like. Lena and Eli keep trying to comfort me. It's probably the pipes. Maybe the wood is settling. It's the wind. All the classics. But none of it matches what we're hearing. Wood settling doesn't move around the doorknob. Pipes don't block the light under the door. By then, it's around 2 a.m., and I am absolutely not sleeping. I tell them straight up, I'm not closing my eyes with that thing out there. So we compromise. Eli helps me push our dresser against the door. It's not the world's heaviest dresser, but it's something. Mentally, it helps. If something tries the door again, at least it won't just swing open. Eventually, pure exhaustion wins. My body basically forces me to pass out. But the night isn't done with me yet. I wake up again sometime between 3:40 and 4 a.m., covered in cold sweat. You know when you bolt awake with that awful feeling like someone is standing right next to your bed? That's how it felt. I didn't hear anything this time. No scratching, no clicking. Just this deep, heavy dread, like the air in the room had changed again. People call it the witching hour, and honestly, in that moment, it felt exactly like the kind of time where everything is just wrong. I'm lying there, heart racing, too scared to move, absolutely convinced something is in the room with us now. Not outside the door, not in the hallway, but inside. I reach over and turn my little nightlight back on. Yeah, I have a nightlight at my big age. I'm not embarrassed. At that moment, it felt like a tiny shield between me and whatever might be watching. I kept that thing on until the first light of morning started creeping in through the curtains. I don't know how much I actually slept after that. It was more like dozing with one eye open. When the sun finally came up and the room was bright again, everything felt normal. No scratches on the door that we could see. No weird marks. The dresser was still in place. The hallway looked the same. The apartment looked like just our apartment. I'm not saying it was definitely something paranormal. Maybe there's some weird logical explanation, some animal we've never seen before, some strange building noise I don't know about. Honestly, at this point, I don't even care if the explanation is boring and logical or straight up supernatural. I just want something that makes sense, because lying awake with no answer, replaying the sound of those scratches over and over, that's the part that scares me the most. So, hey, I'm recording this on the 26th of October, 2025, and I want to tell you about something that happened over the last few nights. I'm from India. Right now I live in a small town in Maharashtra, and we just had Diwali. This year, the main celebrations were on the 19th and 20th of October. If you don't know, Diwali, Deepawali, is called the Festival of Lights. It's connected to the epic Ramayana, and it's usually such a happy, bright time. Diyas everywhere, sweets, family, all of that. But there's this other side people talk about too. They say Diwali night is heavy, spiritually heavy. That spirits are stronger, that people do black magic and witchcraft on that night. We're told not to leave clothes outside, not to keep shoes lying around, not to step over weird powders on the road. All that stuff. And in our house, we tie fresh mango and ashoka leaves on the door for protection. My grandma swears by it. So, before any of this started, I'd moved into a separate room to study because my exams had started. It became my little safe place, you know? My comfort room. I used to actually sleep better there than with everyone else. No fear, no weird vibes. Just me, my books, and my playlists. On Diwali night, the first night, my mom, who I'll call Anita here, told me, "Tonight you're not sleeping alone. Come to our room. It's not good to sleep alone on Diwali. I was stubborn, like peak stubborn. I told her I was fine, that I had to wake up early and I'd sleep better in my own room. She tried to convince me more. This is not good. This is not that kind of night. Listen to me. But I still didn't listen. I grabbed my phone, went to my room, and decided I'd sleep there alone. That first night wasn't dramatic or anything, but that's where the fear started. See, the door in my room sometimes makes these small noises. A light creak here, a little tap there. Our area had really heavy rains and mild flooding a while back, so there's dampness and moisture everywhere. Wood swells, walls crack, things expand and contract. Logically, it makes sense. But that night, with all the stories my mom had just told me echoing in my head, every tiny sound suddenly felt important. I kept telling myself, it's just the weather, it's just the wood, it's just in your head. And I did manage to brush it off and fall asleep. But a seed of fear got planted right there. Second night, 20th October. This was the second day of Diwali. Same kind of thing. I slept in my room again. The little creaks and taps were still there. And again, I tried to ignore them. But now, instead of feeling like random sounds, they were starting to feel noticed. Like my brain was waiting for them. Still, I got through the night. Third and fourth nights, 21st and 22nd October. These two nights were similar, but the feeling changed. The door kept making those soft creaks, nothing super loud or dramatic. But my fear started increasing bit by bit. You know when the room is quiet and your mind is not? The shadows look a little darker, the silence feels heavier. That's what it was like. By the fourth night, the fear became a little sharper. Not a full-blown panic, but like this constant uneasiness. I started double-checking things. Is the window locked? Is the door properly shut? Why does that corner look darker than usual? Nothing happened exactly, but inside, I wasn't calm anymore. Fifth night, 23rd October. This is where things got really weird for me. So evening comes, then night. Everything's normal at first. I get ready for bed in my room. The main light is off, and there's this small, warm, orange night bulb on. It usually makes the room look cozy. But that night, it just made everything look strange. Like the shadows were softer, but also more alive. I lay down on my bed. By the way, my mattress is on a wooden manja bed, and pulled my blanket up. I put on some random YouTube video for background noise, thinking it would help. Then I started noticing the door again. At first, it was the familiar, tiny creaks. I tried ignoring them, but my attention kept getting pulled back. And slowly, those little creaks started sounding less like random wood noises and more like knocks. I remember thinking, don't overthink. You just watched a horror movie. This is what happens. But the sounds kept going, and they started becoming clearer, more intentional. Meanwhile, everything in the room began to feel uncomfortable to look at. The Almirah door was slightly open, just a small gap, but in that dim orange light, it looked like this dark slit, like something could peek through any second. My mattress had gotten a little flat in the middle over time, but that night, it didn't just look flat. It looked like it was sinking, like something heavy was sitting right there in the center, pressing it down. I actually got up and sat on the bed, just staring at it. And then, the knocking changed. It wasn't random anymore. It wasn't just creaking. I could hear it clearly now. Knock, knock. Then a pause. Knock, knock, knock. Another pause. Then knock, knock. It formed this pattern in my head. 2, 3, 2. Not super loud, but clear. Too clear to ignore. At this point, my heart was racing. My body felt tense, like every muscle was on alert. I tried to reason with myself again. The wind, the wood, the house settling, anything. But something inside me, This strong gut feeling was just screaming, "Leave, leave the room, right now." It wasn't a gentle suggestion. It felt like a survival instinct. I was so scared I didn't even want to put my feet on the floor. My phone was right next to me, so I grabbed it and called Ria, who was literally in the next room. I didn't even bother texting. I just called and said, "Can you come to my rooms? Please, right now. Just stand outside my door." My voice was shaking and she could hear it. She didn't even ask too many questions, she just came. I still couldn't bring myself to walk to the door until I heard her voice from outside. "Hey, I'm here. Open it." The moment I unlocked that door and stepped out, it felt like my whole body could breathe again. I'm not exaggerating. It actually felt like leaving a locked cage. We walked back to her room together, and I remember thinking, I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was all in my head or something else, but I do know I'm not sleeping in there tonight. Even now, talking about it, I'm not claiming anything for sure. I don't know if it was just overthinking after a horror movie, the leftover energy of Diwali night, the house creaking from old damp wood, or something I can't explain. All I know is how it made me feel, trapped, watched, and completely on edge in a room that used to be my safe place. So yeah, I've decided one thing for sure. My room definitely needs a deep cleaning, and maybe a proper cleansing too. Physically, energetically, everything. And next Diwali, if my mom tells me, "Don't sleep alone tonight," I think I'm actually going to listen. You know, for a long time I lived with this tight knot in my chest. Years of intense anxiety, these deep fears I couldn't put into words, and a kind of inner pain that made even ordinary days feel heavy. On the outside, I was functioning. On the inside, I felt like I was always bracing for something terrible. My grandfather, my Nono Leo, was the one person who made me feel completely safe. We had this quiet understanding between us, like we didn't need many words to get each other. At the end of 2019, he started showing signs of dementia. It was subtle at first, forgetting small things, repeating the same story twice. Then it got worse. I stayed close to him all the way until he passed in 2021. I was there for hospital visits, confused conversations, and also for these unexpectedly tender moments, when he would squeeze my hand and suddenly look perfectly clear, just for a second, like he'd come back from far away to say, "I'm still here." After he died, I started dreaming about him. At first, they were just dreams, but then they became different. They were sharp, structured, almost more real than being awake. In these dreams, he was lucid, present, and so gentle. It started to feel like he wasn't just visiting, he was trying to show me something. Over time, I understood it as a kind of plan. A very big, very precise plan to save me. One afternoon, I went to visit his grave. I remember the sky was that pale, washed-out blue you get in early spring. Someone had put artificial roses there, bright and plastic, almost too perfect. And right in the middle of them, pushing through the gravel, there was a single, real dandelion. I don't know why, but it stopped me in my tracks. That night, I dreamt of him again. We were sitting at his old kitchen table. He looked at me with that same knowing gaze and said, almost playfully, "Next time you go there, blow on the dandelion. Do it as a sign that you want to be free." The next time I visited, I actually felt a bit silly, but I did it. I leaned down, took a breath, and blew the seeds into the air. As they scattered, something inside me shifted. Very quietly, but unmistakably. From that moment on, things began to speed up. I started receiving what I can only describe as concrete signs. Once, I was walking along a mountain trail in northern Italy, a place where I used to hike with my grandfather. The path was empty, quiet, and I was lost in my thoughts. Out of nowhere, a folded note fluttered down right in front of my feet, like it had fallen from the sky. I picked it up. Inside, written in a shaky hand, were expressions my grandfather used to say only to me. Little phrases, almost like our private language. It felt impossible to dismiss as a coincidence. And that wasn't the only time something like that happened. Around this period, I started having out-of-body experiences. They were different from dreams. In them, I found myself in his garden, the one from my childhood. Everything was exactly the way it used to be. The jasmine climbing up the wall, the smell of damp earth after he watered the plants in the evening, the way the sunlight filtered through the fig tree. And he was there. Sometime later, I went to visit a care facility, just to spend time with the residents, to help out a bit. That's where I met an elderly man named Emilio. From the very first second, something about him reminded me of my grandfather. Not his face exactly, but the way he moved his hands when he talked, the way his eyes softened when he listened, the rhythm of his speech. Being near him felt oddly familiar, almost like sitting beside an echo. One day, I got this strong urge, almost a push, to show him a photo of my grandfather. So I took out my phone, found a picture, and held it out to him. He looked at the screen for a long time. Then he smiled and said, very calmly, "Oh, I know him. I know him very well." I felt this wave of chills run through my whole body. From then on, Emilio started telling me things. Little truths about my life, about struggles I hadn't spoken out loud, about fears I kept hidden. He would make very specific predictions, tiny details about upcoming days, situations, encounters, and they kept happening exactly as he said. But what mattered more than the predictions was what he helped me see. Day by day, conversation by conversation, he guided me to this understanding. My grandfather had a plan to help free me from my anxiety. That there was nothing random about the way our lives had intertwined, or even about the way his illness had unfolded. I began to affectionately call Emilio the Herald, because it felt like he was carrying messages that didn't entirely belong to him, like he was delivering something that had been prepared for me. Through all of this, the dreams, the signs, the garden visits, the meetings with the Herald, a strange idea began to take shape inside me. As unusual as it sounds, it felt like my grandfather had, in some way, offered up his mental clarity so that I could eventually reclaim mine. I started to see his dementia not just as a cruel, senseless disease, but as a kind of sacrifice. Almost as if, on some level I don't fully understand, he had carried the confusion, the fragmentation, so that I could one day find coherence. So that the pain I carried inside me could finally loosen its grip. I'm not saying I have everything figured out. I'm not saying I have all the answers. But what I know is that I am not the same person I was before all this started. My anxiety isn't completely gone, but it no longer rules me. There's more space inside me, more softness, more trust. And when I feel that familiar knot in my chest trying to tighten again, I remember the dandelion. I picture those seeds lifting into the air, carrying my will to be free to a place I can't see, but somehow still believe in. And in those moments, I feel my grandfather close. Not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as someone who loved me so much that he wove a whole hidden plan through illness, symbols, strangers, and dreams, so that, little by little, I could learn how to live again. So, okay, let me just walk you through this because I'm still trying to make sense of it myself. This happened early this morning, out in the Alabama hills. It was around, 2-ish? Something like 2:15, 2:20 a.m. And I can't stop replaying it. I grew up on the east side, born in Independence, raised in June Lake. So I've been up and down that stretch of 395 my whole life, almost 3 decades now. A couple years back, rent got ridiculous, so I built out a van and moved into it. Honestly, it suits me. I love being out in the middle of nowhere. I feel more relaxed when I'm away from other people, tucked down some dirt road where nobody's going to bother me. Last night, I was driving back up from Southern California and decided to break up the drive by camping in the Alabama hills. The plan was pretty simple. Pull in late, sleep a few hours, then wake up, have some coffee, read a bit, wander around the rocks, and then finish the drive back home to June. By the time I found a spot, it was already late, like 12:45 or so. I ended up on this little spur road on the opposite side from the creek. No trees, no water, just those weird, rounded boulders and sand. I remember thinking, perfect. It's ugly but quiet. I'll crash. I probably fell asleep around 1:15. At some point later, I kind of floated up out of sleep because I started hearing birds. And not just one or two. It sounded like morning. Like I was camped by a lush creek with cottonwoods and willows, and the sun was just about to come up and everything was waking up at once. But that wasn't where I was. I was in this barren little turnout on the rocky side, nothing around me that would have been bird heaven. I rolled over, grabbed my phone, and the time was 2:27 a.m. And I remember frowning at the screen like, no way, it's the middle of the night. But I was so tired that a part of me just went, whatever, weird, and I tried to drift back down. Then the birds faded out, and almost immediately it was crickets. Just this wall of cricket noise, like someone had turned one sound off and switched another one on. It was loud, way louder than I remembered when I parked. It felt artificial, or like somebody was messing with the volume knob on nature. I barely got through the thought, did I just not notice this before? When I felt something lean into the side of my van. You know that feeling of weight pressing in? The metal flexed just a little, and then this sound. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a scream, a whistle, and a wail all at the same time. High and piercing, but there was this weird depth under it. It felt like it went straight through my chest. And then my van started shaking. Not just rocking a bit, full-on violent shaking. Earlier this year, a bunch of my friends thought it would be hilarious to mess with me and rocked the van back and forth while I was inside. That was annoying, but it felt like people. It was playful, rhythmic. This was not that. This felt like the whole van was in a storm, like something huge had grabbed it from every direction at once. If that was an earthquake, it was bigger than anything I felt in California, and I've been here my whole life. The movement wasn't rolling. It was like the ground and the van were each trying to go in different directions. And I just broke. Usually, when bears mess with my van, I know what to do. I grew up with black bears around. If they try to get into my vehicle, I'll yell. I'll hit the side. I'll bang on the window. I've always been able to stand my ground with them. But in that moment, I couldn't move. I wanted to scream stop and slam my hand against the glass, and I just couldn't. My body would not cooperate. I was lying there, totally rigid, with tears pouring down my face, listening to this thing happen around me. The fear was different too. I'm used to normal fear, adrenaline, heart racing, brain making plans. This wasn't that. This felt like something heavy in the air, pressing down on me from the outside. Like the whole space around the van was saturated with this, I don't know, presence. It felt evil. I don't use that word lightly, but that's the only way I can describe it. It didn't feel like my own anxiety spiraling. It felt like stepping into a room where something terrible has happened, and your body knows before your brain does. Just this objective, crushing dread. I honestly thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to die here, in my stupid van, in this random turnout off Whitney Portal Road. I have no idea how long it lasted. It might have been 30 seconds. It might have been a few minutes. In my head, it felt like forever. The shaking finally stopped, the sound cut off, and then there was nothing. No crickets, no birds, not even wind. The silence was almost worse than the noise. It was that thick, ringing silence you get after something explodes, where your ears are trying to catch up. I stayed under my blanket like a little kid, shaking and sobbing, listening to absolutely nothing. After a while, I'm guessing 10 minutes, maybe more, I realized I couldn't just stay there. The fear was still there, but underneath it, there was this clear thought. You need to leave. Now. So I forced myself to move. I got some clothes on, grabbed my little combo knife/shovel I used to dig cat holes, and cracked the van door open as quietly as I could. Part of me was terrified something would be standing right there, but outside, it looked normal. I turned my headlamp on low and started checking around my van. I expected to see something. Bear tracks, shoe prints, fresh tire tracks, anything. The dirt out there usually records whoever's been around. Nothing. No bear prints, no human prints I hadn't already made, no new tire marks. I hadn't heard another vehicle pull in or leave while all this was happening either. If a truck had been messing with me, I would have heard it drive off. That was the moment my fear turned into this cold, unsettled feeling. I climbed back in, started the engine, and just left. I didn't even bother pulling my bedding together. I just threw it aside and drove. When I finally got service, I pulled over and checked the earthquake reports for that time, somewhere around 2:30 to 3 a.m. in the Lone Pine area. Nothing. No recorded quakes that matched what I felt. Driving down from Whitney Portal, past town, I could still feel that oppressive heaviness sitting in my chest. And then, as I got farther south on 395, it started to loosen. By the time I was passing Manzanar, it felt like whatever had been on me was finally wearing off. Normally, I hate sleeping at rest stops. I don't like being packed in with strangers. I'm way more nervous about people trying something than I am about animals. But when I pulled into that rest stop south of Big Pine and saw other cars with people sleeping in them, I could have cried from relief all over again. Nothing. I checked again in the morning light, really carefully. No new gouges, no dented panels, nothing bent or twisted. From the outside, it was like the night had been completely uneventful. And that's honestly the part that keeps bothering me. If it had clearly been a bear, or an earthquake, or some drunk person messing around, I'd still be shaken up, but I would have a box to put it in. Instead, I'm left with this experience that feels like it doesn't fit anywhere. For what it's worth, I was camped just east of this rock formation people call Nightfall Rock, in a little side canyon folks around there sometimes refer to as Ranger's Cut in the Alabama hills. I know it's close to LADWP land, and yeah, I probably wasn't supposed to be exactly where I was. The plan was to pull in late, leave early, and just catch a few hours of sleep. After what happened, I don't think I was there even 3 hours total. I'm not trying to jump straight to, it was something supernatural. That's not usually how my brain works. The real reason I'm telling this is because I'm hoping someone who knows the Lone Pine area better, especially around that part of the hills, might have some stories or some kind of explanation. Maybe there's local lore, or maybe someone's had something similar happen out there. Right now, I'm just rattled. It was honestly traumatizing. I've never felt fear like that, and I've never cried the way I did in that van. So yeah, that's what happened. If you've heard anything about that area, or if you've had your own weird night out near Ranger's Cut or around Nightfall Rock, I'd really like to hear it. Okay, so This all really starts a long time ago, when I was still a teenager. I grew up in one of those tiny towns where there's absolutely nothing to do. You know the kind. One blinking stoplight, the same 3 restaurants, everybody knows who your grandparents dated. Back then, my friends and I were really into urban exploring and chasing ghost stories. If someone even whispered that a place might be haunted, we were already in somebody's car, halfway there. There was this old bridge just outside of town, out in an unincorporated community folks around there called Willow Creek. The story was that if you drove onto the bridge at night, your engine would die or your headlights would flicker out. And some of the older folks swore they'd seen a woman step out in front of their car, just standing there in the middle of the road. So of course we had to go. We decided we were going on Halloween night because apparently we were determined to make the horror movie setup as obvious as possible. There were 5 of us: me, Lena, Marisol, Derek, and Cal. I remember we were getting ready to leave my house, and I had this weird knot in my stomach. I turned to Cal and said, "I don't know, this trip feels different. Like, whatever's out there already knows we're coming." He stared at me for a second and said, "Yeah, I kind of feel that too." But we laughed it off. It was Halloween. We were spooking ourselves, right? On the way out there, a couple of us started passing a bottle around. Lena was always the one who overdid it, and she was already getting loud. I didn't want her to get wasted and ruin the whole night, so I took the bottle from her and stuffed it in my bag like, "All right, that's enough, party girl." We turned off the main road onto this old red dirt road that twisted through the trees. That's when Derek, who was driving, slowed down and said, "Hey, look." I glanced up from the passenger seat, and the road ahead was just swallowed in this thick fog. Not a gentle little mist either. It was like a wall of smoke. I remember muttering, "Well, that's convenient," trying to sound brave. Nobody was really talking at that point. The air felt heavy, like when a storm's about to break, but there wasn't any thunder, just that quiet, thick kind of silence. We rolled onto the bridge and Derek stopped us right in the middle. We all sat there for a second, waiting for something dramatic to happen. But nothing. No screaming ghost, no flashing lights, just the hum of the engine. Finally, I said, "Why don't we get out and look around?" Everyone kind of shrugged and agreed, because we hadn't come all that way to just sit in the car. Lena climbed out from the back seat and stumbled a little. I hurried over and grabbed her arm. "Easy," I said, and we started walking together. We were maybe a car length away from Derek's old sedan when the headlights suddenly blinked off, then on again. Marisol whispered, "Nope, nope, let's go. I've seen this movie." But Cal shook his head. "Isn't this literally why we drove out here? We should at least look around." Lena decided she wanted to go down under the bridge, by the water. Of course. So I motioned to Derek to grab her other arm, and the 3 of us started walking down the little slope. As we got closer to the creek, Lena suddenly lifted her head and started talking to the darkness like it owed her money. She goes, "So what, you're not going to show yourself? You scared or something?" Then, "Come on, do something." But she just kept going, waving her arms around, calling whatever was there a coward. The closer we got to the water, the more I felt this static, like the air itself was buzzing under my skin. I knew, deep down, that she had crossed a line. Lena inhaled to start another taunt, and before she could even finish the sentence, something shoved her. Hard. It wasn't like tripping on a rock. She was ripped straight out of mine and Derek's grip. One second she was between us, the next she flew forward and slammed onto her knees, right at the edge of the cold, black water. She screamed, "It pushed me!" I snapped, "I told you not to provoke anything. You never disrespect a spirit." My stomach did this slow roll, and I got really nauseous. That happens to me sometimes around whatever this kind of thing is. I've always been a little sensitive. Cal saw the look on my face and hurried over. Hey, what are you feeling? Do we need to leave? Before I could answer, an image slammed into my mind, like someone just dropped a photograph right behind my eyes. I saw a woman standing in front of me. Dark hair, wet clothes clinging to her. Her face was tired, sad, angry, all at the same time. I swallowed and said, "She's here. We need to go. And Lena, don't say another word." We scrambled back up the incline toward the car. As we were getting in, Derek froze with his hand on the door and whispered, "I just saw her. She was right there by the railing. Oh my God." We piled into the car, and as soon as Derek turned the key, the engine died. Just went dead. He tried again. Nothing. Third time, it finally coughed, sputtered, and came back to life. The way the road was laid out, we had to drive off the bridge, pull into this little gravel patch to turn around, and then go back over the bridge to get home. So we eased forward, turned around, and started crossing it again. Right as we got to the middle of the bridge, every light on the car went out. No headlights, no dash lights, nothing. Just darkness and fog. I panicked, grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and leaned half my body out the window, holding the light out so Derek could see the road at least a little. It was ridiculous and terrifying at the same time. Eventually, we made it back into town, all shaking and pretending we weren't. We went to my house, ordered pizza, we needed something aggressively normal, and decided to just put on some movies and crash there. But you could tell we were all still wired. Nobody wanted to admit how freaked out they were, but the energy was off. We made this giant blanket pile on the living room floor, all of us sleeping there together like little kids at a sleepover. At some point in the night, I heard someone say my name, soft but clear. "Alex." I opened my eyes, looked around. Everyone was out cold. No one had moved. I kept drifting in and out of this restless sleep, and every time I closed my eyes, my dreams shoved me back onto that bridge. The fog, the water, that woman. Before the sun had fully come up, the doorbell rang. It was so early, it made all of us jump upright. I looked at the clock. It was 6 a.m. I got up, crept to the front door, and peeked through the window. Standing on the porch was a longtime family friend, my Aunt Rosa. Now, she's not my aunt by blood, but we've called her that our whole lives. And she's a clairvoyant. That's just always been part of who she is. I opened the door and let her in. She looked at me with this narrowed, suspicious expression and didn't say a word. Then she went straight past me and headed up the stairs. "Alex!" she shouted. We all sat up at once. "Yeah?" I answered, heart racing. Aunt Rosa appeared behind my mom, calm as anything, and asked, "Alex, where were you last night?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to lie, but this is a woman who has known things about me I'd never said out loud. If she was asking, she probably already knew. My mom said, "Get upstairs and talk to your Aunt Rosa. Now." So I dragged myself upstairs to my room. Aunt Rosa was already sitting on my bed like she'd been waiting there for an hour. She patted the mattress. "Sit," she said. "Where did you kids go last night?" Because she followed you home. My skin went cold. "We went to the bridge," I started. She cut me off. "The one out on Willow Creek Road?" I nodded. She shook her head and sighed. "Why would you go out there, after what happened?" I blinked at her. "What happened?" She called out, "Maria, come here a minute." My mom came into the room, already looking guilty. Aunt Rosa asked her, "You never told Alex about what happened out on that bridge?" My mom shook her head and said quietly, "No, I didn't think it was my place. I thought their dad would have told them." My mom sat down on the other side of me, and I remember the bed dipping under her weight. She took a deep breath. "In the late 50s, she began, "you had a cousin on your dad's side. Her name was Elena. She'd gone through a rough divorce and started working at a little bar near Willow Creek. It was close enough that she could walk home and still keep an eye on her kids. She paused, looking down at her hands. One night, 2 men followed her when she left. They did terrible, terrible things to her. Then they threw her off the bridge and into the water. I just sat there, stunned. I'd never heard any of this before. Why would she follow me? I asked, turning to Aunt Rosa. I didn't provoke her. I tried to be respectful. Aunt Rosa said, gently but firmly, because she knew you were family. She recognized the blood, and she's still trying to protect her children. She's been stuck there, watching, guarding, for a long time. We need to help send her to the light. Tonight. Later that day, my friends and I went to my great-grandmother's house, Nana June, to ask about Elena. As soon as we mentioned her name, Nana's whole face softened. She pulled out an old box of photos. There were pictures of Elena, smiling in those soft, faded colors, and photos of her kids, 2 little boys with crooked grins. Nana told us that Elena's ex-husband had paid those men to kill her, and that all 3 of them were now long dead. Her voice shook when she said it, but there was this fierce anger underneath her grief. We asked if we could borrow the photos for the night, and she agreed, as long as we brought them back. That evening, we went to Aunt Rosa's house. She and my mom had set up candles in the dining room, a big one in the center, and smaller ones around it. The pictures of Elena and her children were laid out carefully on the table. We all sat down, my friends included. Nobody was joking around anymore. Aunt Rosa closed her eyes and started speaking softly, calling Elena by name, telling her who was at the table, telling her that I was her blood. She said, "You followed Alex because you knew they were yours, your family. You were trying to protect your children, weren't you?" The room got noticeably colder. It was like someone opened a door to winter. Then, while we were all staring, one of the photos, the one with Elena's children, slid a few inches across the table. No breeze, no one touching it. Aunt Rosa looked at the photo and said, "Elena, listen to me. Your ex-husband and the 2 men who hurt you, they're dead. They're gone. They are not near your boys. They are not near anyone. You don't have to stand guard anymore." She spoke to her for what felt like a long time, telling her there was light waiting for her, that she could be with her children again someday if she crossed over. She told her that staying there, trapped in anger and fear, wasn't helping them anymore. The temperature kept dropping until I could see the faintest bit of my breath. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. I closed my eyes for a moment, and there she was again, clear as before. Elena. She looked so tired, but there was a softness around her now. She looked at me, and I heard, not with my ears but somewhere inside, a quiet, "Thank you." In my mind, I saw her turn away from the bridge, away from the dark water, and walk toward this soft, bright light. No drama, no choir of angels, just relief. Right then, the largest candle on the table went out all at once. No flicker, no sputter, just gone. And almost immediately, the cold in the room lifted. The air felt normal again. For me, that was all the confirmation I needed. I knew she was gone. Not erased, not forgotten, just finally at peace. People around there still tell stories about Willow Creek Bridge. Old legends stick around, you know? But as far as I've heard, there hasn't been any real paranormal activity out there since that night. A while back, I drove out that way again. Just me, in my own car, on a quiet afternoon. The bridge looked smaller than I remembered. They usually do, when you go back as an adult. I pulled over, got out, and stood by the railing, looking down at the water. No fog, no static in the air. Just the sound of the creek moving along like it always had. And for the first time, I didn't feel scared or watched. I felt calm. I whispered, I hope you're with them now." And in my chest, it felt like the end of a sentence that had taken decades to finish. That's when I knew, in my bones, that she wasn't trapped there anymore. She was finally home. So, let me tell you about my house. I live in this 2-story place that was built in the late 70s. It's nothing super fancy, just an older family home in a quiet neighborhood. Before we moved in, only one other family ever lived here. It was an older married couple. The wife eventually moved to a nursing home, and her husband, a man named Frank, passed away not long after. Nobody's really sure if he died in the house or at the hospital. That's kind of where the story starts. From the beginning, there were all these small, weird things that we just brushed off. The pictures in the upstairs hallway? They never stay straight. You can fix them, line them all up perfectly, and then a few hours later they're tilted again. Every single one. And then there are the footsteps. Downstairs we've got these metal vents in the ceiling. Even when the heat or the AC isn't running, we'll hear footsteps walking across the vents above, like the sound of someone pacing back and forth upstairs. At first we blamed it on the house settling or maybe the cat, but the cat is terrified of the upstairs, so yeah. Those were the little things. Annoying, unsettling, but easy to ignore. The bigger stuff started with my grandma. My grandma, Nana Rose, was staying with us for a few nights. When I came home one evening, she pulled me aside and said, "You know, you scared me last night." I was confused. I hadn't even been home. She told me she'd heard my voice calling her, clear as day, from the basement. Not once, but 2 nights in a row. Just, "Nana, can you come down here?" And she said the tone sounded exactly like me. Not just any voice, mine. The thing is, the first night she heard it, I was at my friend Mia's house. The second night, I was working late. I wasn't anywhere near the basement or the house at all. About a year after that, everything kind of exploded into this cluster of activity. It was like something in the house had been building up and suddenly decided, okay, it's showtime. The first big incident happened at the top of the stairs. It was me, my little brother Josh, and my stepdad, Mark. We were standing at the landing, just talking about something stupid, like what to eat for dinner or whatever. Right above the stairwell, on the wall, we had this big framed photo. We'd hung it really securely with these 2 hooks, like you had to lift it up and then out to take it off. There's no way it could just slide off on its own. In the middle of our conversation, the picture suddenly lifted. We watched it tilt forward, as if someone had grabbed the top of the frame and pulled it away from the wall. Then it came off the hooks completely and crashed all the way down the stairs to the bottom. We all just froze. Josh bolted, and I remember Mark and I just staring at each other with that, "Did you see that?" look. We both knew how we'd hung that picture. There was no draft, no one bumped the wall, nothing. It moved like someone had physically picked it up and thrown it. The next night, I wasn't home again. I was staying at a friend's house. My mom, Lisa, and Mark were asleep downstairs in the living room, back when we had the couches pulled out into beds. We have these little hanging bells on the front and back doors that our dogs ring when they need to go out. They jingle in a really particular way when the door opens. Mark said he woke up because he heard the front door. Not just the bells jingling, but that heavy, recognizable sound of the door opening and closing. After that, he heard slow, heavy footsteps walking across the floor upstairs. Steady, human footsteps moving down the hallway. When he came back down, Mom was still half asleep. She said she hadn't heard anything. Not the door, not the footsteps, not even Mark running around above her. The night after that, things got even weirder. My mom and Mark were upstairs this time, watching TV in the loft. The dogs were lying next to them, totally calm. Out of nowhere, they both heard it. This clear sound of a little girl giggling downstairs. Not just a vague sound, a child's laugh. They looked at each other at the same time like, "Did you hear that too?" And then they both ran downstairs together. The downstairs was empty. No TVs on, no windows open, nothing. As they turned to go back up the stairs, they both heard these tiny footsteps on the stairs behind them, like a small person running up the stairs right on their heels. But when they turned around, nothing there. Later that night, when they went to bed, my mom was lying there in the dark, trying to fall asleep. Mark was next to her, already out. She said she suddenly heard heavy footsteps, like someone running, up and down the hallway upstairs. Not slow, not shuffling, full-on running. Mark didn't hear a thing. He still got up, walked the hall, checked the rooms. Same story. Nobody there, house locked up, dogs still asleep. 2 nights after that, it was my turn. And honestly, I think my experience might be the creepiest one, at least for me. Back then, my bedroom was upstairs, right at the end of the hallway, near the back door that opens onto this small balcony. I was in bed, scrolling on my phone, kind of in that half-asleep zone. The house was quiet. Everyone else was downstairs. First, I heard the bells on the back door jingle. Just once, like the door had moved. Then I heard slow footsteps coming up the stairs. You know that feeling when you're sure you're home with other people, but suddenly you feel alone? It was like that. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and walked across the hall, right past my door, toward the back door. I heard the doorknob jiggle, like someone was trying to open it. It clicked a few times, like they were really trying, but the lock wouldn't budge. Then the footsteps came back down the hallway. They stopped near the light switches by the bathroom. I heard the click of the switches flipping on and off. Over and over. It felt like it went on forever, probably 20, 30 times at least. But no lights came on. My room stayed dark. The strip of light under my door never changed. Then the footsteps went into the bathroom. I heard this soft rustling, like someone opening cabinets, moving things around, maybe going through drawers. Bottles clinking, something brushing against the counter. Then sudden silence. No footsteps leaving, no door closing, just nothing. A few minutes passed. It felt like an hour. Then I heard it, breathing, right outside my bedroom door. Not the house creaking, not the heater. Actual breathing. Slow and heavy, like someone standing on the other side of the door with their face almost against it. I completely froze. My eyes were open, but I was too scared to move. My throat felt tight, and my eyes started to water. I remember silently crying because I didn't want whatever it was to know I was awake. The breathing stopped for a second. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. And then, clear as anything, I heard my doorknob turn. I heard the metal click, the latch shift, like the door was opening. But the door didn't move. No light came in, no shadow, nothing. It sounded open, but it stayed shut. I didn't sleep at all that night. After that, the intense stuff calmed down for a while. We still had the tilted pictures and the occasional footsteps, but it was quieter. Until about a year later, in the middle of our conversation, I saw a man walk past the doorway. He didn't look ghostly or transparent or anything. He looked solid enough that my brain didn't even immediately register him as wrong. He was tall, wearing a long dark coat and a kind of old-fashioned hat. Like a top hat, but not cartoonish, more like something from the 40s. He walked into the kitchen doorway, turned like he was heading toward the sink, and then kept going out of my line of sight. I stopped talking. My mom stopped too, at the exact same time. After a second, she turned around and looked toward the doorway and then back at me. I said, "Did you just see that?" And she said, "The man with the coat?" We both described him the same way. Tall, wearing a dark trench coat, some kind of hat, moving calmly, like he belonged there. Mark, meanwhile, saw nothing. He just said the air suddenly felt heavy and weird, like walking into a room where someone had just been arguing. Since that night, nothing big has happened. The pictures still tilt. Every now and then we hear footsteps on the vents or across the hall when nobody's up there. It's like whatever is here is quieter now, but not gone. I don't know if it's Frank, the original owner, or someone else, or maybe even more than one someone. I don't fully understand what we've been experiencing, but I'll be honest with you. Even on the calmest nights, when the house is quiet and everything seems normal, there's still this feeling. Like somewhere in the hall, just out of sight, that man in the coat might still be walking by. So, I've seen ghosts pretty much my whole life. That's just kind of been my normal. But this one still makes my stomach drop when I think about her. This all happened, almost 10 years ago now. I don't even live in the same country anymore, so I'm sure some details are a little fuzzy. But to the best of my memory, this is my creepiest encounter. I was 17, and my mom was driving my friend Sam home one night. It was late, one of those quiet stretches of road where the streetlights are way too far apart. We were just talking about school and music, nothing special, when I saw her. Right at the edge of the road, in our headlights, there was a woman. Long, dark hair hanging in her face, a faded maroon t-shirt and jeans. She wasn't walking, though. She was crawling out toward the middle of the road. I remember sitting up straighter, getting ready to say something like, "Mom, is she okay?" But as we got closer, everything felt wrong. My mom's face didn't change. Sam didn't react at all. No one slowed down. No one gasped. It was just me, staring at this crawling woman in the headlights as we drove right past her like she wasn't there. And as we passed her, she turned her head toward me. I realized I was the only one who could see her. We kept going, and I just sort of swallowed it and shrugged it off. At that point, seeing ghosts wasn't new to me. I'd been seeing them for as long as I could remember. So I filed her away as another random sighting and tried not to think too hard about why she'd been dragging herself into the road. About a week later, it was late, and I was lying in bed. My bedroom door was open, and the soft glow from the bathroom nightlight was just barely lighting up the living room. The couch was pushed almost flat against the wall, right outside my door, like there was no space back there. Not even our cat could fit behind it. That's why it was so weird when I saw movement in that exact spot. At first, it was just a little shift in the shadows. Then, slowly, a hand appeared, pale fingers curling around the edge of the couch. Then an arm, elbow bending unnaturally as it slid out from behind a place no one should have been able to fit. I watched her crawl out from this impossible gap, inch by inch. Long, dark hair, that same maroon t-shirt, the same jeans. The crawling woman, right outside my bedroom. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared. Like, frozen but pretending I wasn't scared. So I did what a lot of us do when we're terrified. I turned over in bed, faced the wall, and tried to pretend I hadn't just seen a woman crawl out from behind the couch. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to look again. A few minutes later, I rolled back over. She was gone. I forced myself to go to sleep after that, but I definitely did not sleep well. A couple days later, I told my mom about her. We were watching a movie in the living room, lights off, just the TV flickering. I was like, "So, I've been seeing this woman," and I started describing her. Right in the middle of my sentence, my mom suddenly sucked in a breath and jumped up. She slapped the light switch on and just stared toward the front door. I asked, What happened?" She said, "I just saw a woman with long dark hair crawling by the front door." That was the first time we both admitted seeing the same thing. It wasn't until I was older, like late teens and now as an adult, that we actually started talking about it openly, swapping stories, comparing what we'd seen. And yeah, sometimes we see the exact same spirits. We've moved a lot over the years. Different apartments, different houses, different cities. For anyone thinking carbon monoxide, trust me, I appreciate the concern, and I always tell people to check their detectors because that stuff really can kill you. But in our case, it doesn't really add up. I'll see the same ghosts in completely different locations, sometimes years apart. Anyway, the crawling woman. We both saw her, and she was creepy in that kind of The Grudge or The Ring way, except she always had jeans and that t-shirt. Not a long white dress or anything dramatic, just unsettlingly normal clothes. Now, I don't usually get recurring nightmares. Even the scary dreams I do have, I'm rarely scared inside the dream. It's more like I wake up and go, wow, that was messed up, and then move on with my day. But one night, I had a dream about her. And that one got under my skin. In the dream, I was in the basement of my childhood home, hanging out with friends. We were playing video games, being loud, doing the usual teen stuff. Then there was this noise from upstairs, one of those sounds where everyone goes quiet at the same time. We all looked at each other, freaked out, and bolted for the stairs. Somewhere between the basement and the kitchen, my friends just disappeared. You know how dreams are. They were there, and then they weren't, like the story forgot about them. I ended up alone in the kitchen. That's when my cat, Pumpkin, this chubby orange guy I loved to pieces, trotted in, meowing and rubbing against my leg. I relaxed a little. I bent down to pet him. Then another pumpkin walked in, and another, and another. Soon the entire kitchen was filled with identical pumpkins, just copies of the same cat walking around my feet, weaving between my legs, staring up at me with the same wide eyes. It was like the dream zoomed in and everything was cats and silence and my own breathing. And then I saw her. The crawling woman was standing this time, not on the floor, but right in front of me. And I was suddenly backed up against the wall, body stuck like someone had pressed pause. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The cats were gone, like they'd never been there. She started walking toward me, slow and deliberate. I remember thinking, how am I going to get out of this? Because I knew, even in the dream, that she wanted to hurt me. There was this heavy, hateful feeling coming off her in waves. Right when she got close, the front door slammed open with this huge crack. A man in a worn leather jacket kicked the door in. I never forgot that detail. His jacket and his boots. He strode in like he belonged there, grabbed my arm, and yanked me away from her. We rushed out of the house together, and suddenly we weren't in my neighborhood anymore. We were walking down this endless, empty road. As we walked, I could feel myself starting to wake up, like my awareness was shifting. I turned to him and asked, "What just happened? Who is she?" He looked at me, and his voice was calm but serious. He said, "She wants to kill you. She wants you dead, but first she wants to hurt you. She wants you to suffer before she kills you." His words echoed in my head as I woke up. I remember looking at the clock, around 8 a.m. Not exactly the classic witching hour, but there we were. The same dream. Basement, friends, noise, the scramble upstairs, the kitchen, pumpkin, more pumpkins, too many pumpkins. The crawling woman, frozen against the wall, the door slamming open, the man in the leather jacket. Only this time, when he grabbed my arm and pulled me out of the house, he didn't say anything. We walked that same endless road, but he just stayed beside me, quiet. And yet I knew, he knew, that I remembered what he'd told me the first time. "I wake up faster," is the only way I can describe it. Like he was getting better at pulling me out. When I woke up, I was so grateful he'd shown up again. This random stranger in my dream who felt not random at all. And then, anticlimactic as it might sound, I never saw her again. I was terrified to go to sleep the next night, expecting round 3, but she never came back. No more crawling woman in the living room, no more nightmare basement, no more hateful presence. Over time, I started to understand something else. That man in the leather jacket wasn't just some dream character. He was a spirit too. He's followed me now to 5 different homes, different cities, different jobs, different everything. But he's always there in the background, especially when something nasty tries to bother me at night. His name is Elias. In the waking world, he usually appears as a shadow man, tall, solid, but never fully detailed, like he's standing in a doorway where the light doesn't reach. Elias has stepped in more than once when spirits tried to attack me in my sleep. He's been doing that for about 8 years now. I do practice witchcraft, but I want to make this part clear. I haven't bound him to me, and I won't. I don't own him. He stays because he wants to, and I'm incredibly grateful for his protection, but I'm not going to force it. If he ever chooses to leave, that's his decision. I'd feel a lot less confident without him, honestly, but he's not my pet or my tool. He's my, I don't know, guardian? Friend? Something in that space. I still don't know what the crawling woman's deal was. I don't know why she zeroed in on me, why she wanted to hurt me so badly, or how exactly Elias managed to kick her out of my life so completely. I just know I haven't seen her since. No more recurring nightmares. No more women crawling out from behind couches that are flush against the wall. Just silence where she used to be. And the funny part is, for all that buildup, most of my ghost encounters end kind of abruptly like that. No big dramatic showdown, no explanation, no closure. Ghosts just come and go. Some hang around for a little while, a few stay for years, and most move on without ever telling you who they were or what they wanted. I don't go looking for them. I don't advertise myself as psychic or offer services or anything. Honestly, I think it's rude to bother the dead on purpose. They've already done the whole living thing. They deserve some peace. So I mostly don't talk to them. I don't try to get their attention. I just live my life and hope they're doing their thing on the other side. But this story? This one still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. I do not like whoever she was. I hope she finds peace someday, really. Because being that angry, that focused on hurting someone, that can't be a good existence for a spirit. I know there's no big cinematic ending here. No, and then we discovered she died on that very road, or we found her name in an old newspaper. Nothing like that. I don't have an explanation, and I probably never will. For a long time, I didn't tell anyone stories like this. My mom was always worried people would try to use me to contact the dead if they knew I could see things, so we kept it quiet. It was our little secret. I just wanted to share it.